Good morning and welcome to the second annual BEYA Leading Voices Summit. My name is Jessica Raphael and I'll be your host today. On behalf of the BEYA STEM Conference and STEM City USA, we're excited to be here today with you and bring you this incredible summit with HBCU Vice Presidents of Research. Today's Leading Voices Summit will highlight transformational innovators creating a successful environment between HBCUs and partnering with tech companies on the latest technological innovations. You can stay engaged today by using the QR code in the corner. Feel free to leave comments, ask questions, and make connections with our speakers and other attendees throughout the program. Make sure to stick around until the end, where we will have a special announcement and unveiling. After the program, take time to explore the metaverse inside STEM City USA, STEM City Kansas City, Chicago, and Detroit. STEM City USA is expanding, and you're a part of the growth process. So let's get started with our first segment. We have a great talk coming up by Dr. Colin Paris, Senior Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at GE Digital and 2023 Black Engineer of the Year. He'll be sharing a motivational keynote on the future of AI and machine learning in energy at GE Digital. Please welcome Dr. Colin Paris.
Okay, good morning, Jessica. Thank you very much. It is my true honor and delight to be here, to lead this exceptional summit, this Leading Voices Summit. And it's on a topic that's near and dear to my heart, right? We're talking about technology, and it's the technology that we are putting together from our community, the HBCUs, the industries, government organizations coming together to tackle some of the largest problems we have on the planet. And as I always say, when you're looking at problems these large, the world at times becomes colorblind. So there's a massive opportunity for us. So with that, let me begin and ask for my presentation to come up. So what I'll be talking to you about is AI ML in the energy transition. So now these are two topics that are really profound to me. Our society is built on energy, right? Everything you do is based on energy. You travel, there's a fuel involved. You go at home, you turn on your lights, you communicate, there is some form of energy involved to make that happen. Our schools, our societies, our economies all need and thrive on energy. In fact, energy allows the growth of the civilization. At the same time, we have more and more problems. So how do we counteract those problems? Intelligence. So now you have the combination of intelligence that comes with AI ML against one of the most powerful forces that shape the society, which is energy. And when you bring those two together, there's many problems you can solve. So with that, let's jump into the talk. If you can go to the next slide. So what I'd like to do is talk about three topics. The first topic is, what is this energy transition? A transition means you're going from one place to the other. So what is this exactly that we're doing? Where are we coming from? Where are we going to? The second point I have here is, why is digital transformation and the use of AI ML vital? Now, when I use the word digital transformation, at that foundation, I'm saying we are gathering a lot of data in our society, a huge amount, and we've been doing it for the last 20 years. So how do I take that data and then use the capabilities of artificial intelligence and machine learning to help us in this energy transition, right? And then the third point is, how is that value obtained? So when we use technology to deliver value, operational value, financial value, societal value. You've got to know, how do you translate anything you do with technology into value? And we'll talk about that. So those are the three topics. Keep those in mind. And then let's get into what we're talking about. So let's address the first one. What is the energy transition? Let's go to the next slide. So when you think about the energy transition, every time I think about a phenomenon that's occurring, I think about the forces that are affecting it, right? What's making that happen? Because once you understand what's making something happen, then you get an ability to do two things well. You get an ability to say, okay, where could this potentially lead us if these things are making it happen? What direction is it going in? And second, what levers do I have to understand the problem as well as the solution? So let's talk about the market forces we have. So what you see here are four forces, call them the 4 Ds. Decarbonization. You've heard about that. Right now, we believe, especially if you look at what's going on right now in the world, in terms of the weather effects, there's a huge amount of climate change, the effects of climate change we're experiencing. And we believe we're experiencing it because of the amount of carbon that's in the air and that we continue to put in the air. So we want to grow renewable capabilities. What are renewable energy sources? Renewable energy sources are sources that do not put carbon in the air. So wind energy, right? The wind blows, the turbines spin, that generates an electric current that doesn't produce any carbon. Solar energy, the sun shines, it shines down on photovoltaic. Those photovoltaics convert that into electrical energy that puts energy on the grid, but it doesn't produce any carbon. So when we think about renewables growth, and they have given you some numbers, that's a significant amount of wind turbine. That's what you see there is terawatt hours, which is the amount of energy that they will in the future need to put onto the grid. From 200,000 kilowatt hours to, 12. Sorry, it should be 2,000 kilowatt hours to 12,000 kilowatt hours, a 6x jump. So that means we have a lot of wind turbines that we've got to put there. So the second thing you have to think about is electrification. So what we're trying to do here is we're saying, while we're taking out the energy, the carbon from the air and not putting as much in, we want to grow certain sources of energy that are very efficient. And so this is the notion of electrification. When you use electricity to generate transportation and heat our homes, it is much, much more efficient. So you look at an EV. An EV can transform 80% of the energy stored in its battery to actually moving the wheels on the car. If you look at a regular combustion engine, like you find in a normal car that you fill with fuel, it's roughly 20 to 30%. So the electric vehicle is 3 to 4 times more efficient in the use of energy. So not only can I create energy that doesn't have carbon, I'll use less of it. When I do things like heat my home, when I do things like light my home, when I do things like transportation. So that's the second one for electrification. The next one is called decentralization. So this is all about what else is happening. So what we have is we have a number of people. So normally what occurred before was electricity was generated, it was transmitted all the way to the endpoints, and in your houses, what you would do is consume it. But now people are putting solar panels on their houses, right? People are using batteries to store it. And then at times they're selling the energy back to you. So that's decentralization. All the energy isn't created in one place. And the last powerful thing is digitization. The amount of data gathered, the cost of the sensors, the cost of the computers to actually use that data to allow us to be better utilized has dropped remarkably. And what is this affecting? When you combine decarbonization, the deregulation, decentralization, and digitization, it's affecting every industry. We're getting different fuels in aviation, so there's less pollutants being put in the air, less carbon in the air from aviation fuels. Our utility companies are not using coal, they're using renewable sources. Our buildings are becoming more efficient in how they use energy. Our cars are becoming more efficient in going towards electric or hybrid. Oil and gas companies are becoming more efficient in how they actually generate the oil, produce the oil, because the oil is, again, used for other things like plastics and fertilizers. Every industry is being impacted. So if you go to the next page, so now I've given you some forces, and these forces are tremendous. So now, why is this such a big problem? Well, two things. The grid is more complex. Look at the yesterday chart. The yesterday chart is fairly straightforward. Power was generated. It's transmitted over these large distances. Then it's stepped down and it's distributed into our neighborhoods and into our industrial sites. And then the customers consume it. Today, instead of a few generation sources out there, you have many more renewable generation sources. Why? Because when you look at coal and natural gas, they are really efficient. Their efficiency is at 60% capacity. A renewable farm for wind is at 30%. For solar, it's at 20%. So for every coal plant you shut down, you've got to put up 2 or 3 wind and solar plants, many more. Then you go back into distribution. People have their own grids. They have their own solar panels on their homes. They have their own electric vehicles. Some of companies actually building their own farms themselves so that they can protect themselves whenever there are problems. Look at the complexity in today. And even more so, the requirements are more challenging. You always have to have the grid reliable. When I walk in and I turn on the lights go on. I'm an engineer. I generate electricity, I make it stable. However, whenever I walk in a room and I turn on the lights, nobody claps. Everybody takes that for granted. It has to be resilient. When there's storms, you can't have blackouts. It has to be affordable. And now it has to be sustainable. Very challenging requirements. And more variability is increasing, more volume is increasing, more velocity of the events like storms and cyber attacks are increasing. So if you go to the next page, how do you deal with these problems that need to be solved? And what we found, we've been working on this for the last decade or so, is that in every case, when you try to solve that problem, you're doing roughly 3 things. For instance, let's use reliable. To make the energy reliable, you have to detect problems early. You can't wait until a tower collapses because it's older, or it's in a situation whereby the next windstorm or next hurricane that comes by, it wasn't securely attached. So can you detect those problems early? Can you predict what will fail? And then can you optimize it? Can you make that equipment perform the most reliable, right? If I look at affordability, can I detect the health? Because every time something crashes, that means, if a lot of things are failing, I'm going to have extra ones. If I have extra ones, it's going to cost more. So can I detect the health that's needed to reduce all these losses, as well as the fact that these things don't stop running? Can I predict what the load will be? How many people will have, their electric vehicles charging? How many of them have solar panels, so I don't need to give them a lot more energy in their homes? How do I predict the load as well as the amount of supply I can get? And how do I optimize it so the cost is affordable? So those are common problems in every case. Detect, predict, and optimize. Let's go to the next chart. So if I'm thinking about detection, prediction, and optimization, as we go to the next chart. Right. I'm thinking as well about the fact that I have a significant amount of data, right? Data is becoming cheaper and cheaper because the sensors are cheaper, the storage is cheaper, the compute is cheaper, right? The algorithms you use are open source, so they become much cheaper. How do I use that data with AI ML capability to solve these problems? Because that's how value shows up. We don't just build and use technology because we like technology. We use it to solve certain problems. So let's talk about AI. So what you see in the outer circle is the AI capabilities that everyone knows. Natural language processing. Can you translate speech? Can you translate text? Speech recognition. Can you recognize and work with speech? Knowledge representation. Can I actually show the things that are related? Can I say this turbine, inside this turbine has blades, it has a nacelle, this turbine, and you collect all of the parts in the relationship. That's knowledge representation. Can I use computer vision to actually have the computer see things? And can I do robotics to do things? Now, what has changed in the last 20 years is the use of machine learning capability. Machine learning capability, is mainly derived from powerful statistical techniques. And because you have a lot of data and you have computing resources, you now have the ability to use machine learning to significantly learn from that data, right? And we have a number of techniques we have there: supervised, unsupervised, reinforcement, transfer learning. And what we do is we find ways to use this machine learning capability as applied to artificial intelligence, like computer vision. And can you detect things? Can you predict things? Can you optimize things? So let me go on the right-hand side and give you some examples. So for instance, what you see in the upper right corner is detecting vegetation near power lines. So we fly drones, and those drones take pictures of those power lines. And from that, the computer vision algorithm can recognize, you see a lot of the green space, those long, skinny thing are the transmission lines. And then we use the computer vision algorithm to detect how close those trees are to those lines. So if there is a storm, can that tree branch hit and break the line and cause a fire? Using computer vision to do that. Also, the thing you see below that, it's detecting the asset damage. We actually have drones fly and look at the wind turbine, and that's the blade that spins, and take pictures of it. We slow down the blade or we stop the blade. Can we identify damage? Can we identify cracks? Can we identify chips? Can we identify any damage that's on that blade from a picture? And then translate that picture, and then the computer comes back and says, this is the damage, here's the size of the damage, and then can put that in a report. That's detecting a problem. Next thing is predicting. So what you see there is predicting electrical supply and loads. Now, why is that difficult? Normally, we have algorithms that do this prediction. The difficulty, though, is that we have a situation now where electric vehicles can move around. We have a situation where people are putting solar panels on their roof. We have a situation in which the heat or the cold is changing rapidly. And when you have the situation where there's great variability with many small objects, the prediction algorithms we have are better augmented using machine learning AI. So now we can better predict the supply that we have and the loads that we have to serve. We also have the ability to predict asset failure, right? Again, the asset is changing. Before, these assets behaved in one way, right? These large gas turbines, they were just putting out energy. But now we're using wind turbines because that energy is free, and we're not using the gas turbines all the time. We use them well some days when the wind blows. We use them less other days. You see the variability? Every time there's a lot of variability, we can combine that AI ML capability with physics and do better predictions. The last thing is optimization. Now, we've done optimization before, but again, we come back to that variability and the volume. Can we find ways to optimize? This is having the gas turbines optimize, the combination of the fuel they use, and they have to use the minimal fuel, but produce the lowest carbon while giving me the highest yield of electricity. A huge problem, AI ML. Or we can predict a way, we can optimize a way to drop the prices to be the lowest possible electric prices by determining who actually gets the dispatch power, who can create power in such a way that these prices remain low so they're affordable to all. This is the power of AI ML. It is vital in solving the high value problems. And it can do so more accurately, faster, lower cost. That's what we're looking for. So next slide, please. So now that you know that, now that you can predict, you can detect, you can optimize something, how do you actually put it in a business flow, an operational workflow, such that you can get value from it? Because again, I can have the best algorithm in the world, but I've got to somehow put it in the business process so you do something differently. You have to act. So if you look at the diagram to the left, you start with a physical asset. We have a lot of knowledge of the physical asset. We can look at the power systems we have. GIS is the global information systems. We can see where all the lines are. We can see where all the generators are, the transformers are. We know where the type of operation. So we combine the physical knowledge we have and the domain knowledge with the AI ML, and we create this thing called a digital twin. The twin is exactly what we were talking about before. The use of that vision capability or the use of that knowledge representation capability with machine learning, or the use of the optimization capability with machine learning to create a living learning model. So I may actually create a living learning model of the gas turbine. What does that mean? It means I am constantly taking data, and I have a model of the turbine. I take data and I update the model. Okay, the model has been running now for the last year. All right, I'm updating it every week or so, every 2 days. So now it's accurate. It takes into consideration the damage on the parts. It takes into consideration how long I used it. It takes into consideration the environment, how hot it was or cold it was. So it's a living model. It becomes a learning model when I do it over many models. And then I say, this model, I've seen the experiences because we have been looking at this model on this turbine for 5 years. This is a new turbine for 2 years, but I can learn from it because this new turbine is in a similar environment operating in a similar way using a similar fuel. So living learning model. But here's the key thing. Once I get those insights in terms of detecting a problem or predicting or optimization, I have to do something with it. Either I give it to a human, the human is an advisor, the human says, oh, we've detected vegetation problems. Okay, let me dispatch a crew to go and cut that vegetation from the lines. I could send it to a process. Oh, we detected that this machine is going to fail. So let me actually send that to an SAP system and a work order is created. And what would happen then is that they will go out right away and they will do repairs before it actually fails. Or I can send it to a control system. I can literally say, I've detected how best to optimize the turbine. Let me send it to the control system, and the control system of the gas turbine would change the mix of fuel and air it's using and the temperature it's burning at, so I get the most amount of energy with the least amount of carbon. You have to do something. When you do something, an outcome comes. That data goes back in the twin, and the twin becomes smarter. And then eventually, you send the data all the way back to the designers, and they can design better. So that's what we have. So what we have is a model that actually has the ability, and by model, I actually am talking about this workflow where I can get the insight, but I have to take an action. And I plug into the computer systems or the human decision-making systems or the control systems that allow me to take the action and get the benefit. So this is the way that you deliver the actual value. So if you go to the next slide, let's talk a bit about some of the examples that we have. Right. And in the next slide, let me give you some examples. And this is why it's important that every time we speak from a perspective of technology and delivery, we think about the value. We actually think about the value. So for instance, early detection. So this is a hydro pump in a hydro plant. And what we literally are doing is we are taking information, data about the generator, the load on the generator, the temperature of the bearings, the vibration of it. And what we're doing is we are using AI, ML, and physics to look for an anomaly. So we have trained the AI system as to what is normal. And once it knows what it's normal, it then begins to look and see, well, when is it abnormal? And at a certain threshold, an anomaly score, if it's very abnormal, or if it's between 1 to 5, and 1 is very normal, 5 is very abnormal, maybe it's 2 or 3. At a certain point, when there's abnormality, when an anomaly exists, you alert. You alert the user or the control operator, and then you also try to tell him, give him some ideas or her, what's the root cause of that? And because we've done that, we have the ability, for instance, in this case, to detect that a admission valve failure, man, easily with one single event, be able to save $100,000. And how you save that money is once you get the anomaly early, you send someone out and they can do a minor repair. Maybe it's a tightening of a bolt, maybe it's a reseating of a valve in certain ways. And once you do that, you didn't wait until the valve was totally damaged, which could cost you $100,000. It might cost you $2,000. $1,000 to actually fix it early. Life prediction, the same thing. I can look at the gas turbine. I can look at the data around its exhaust temperature and its pressure. I can actually then create, a way to talk about what's the part life, right? I predict the part life, based upon the firing temperature and the plant efficiency. And now I can say things like, well, given the fact that I think the part has some extra life because they're not using the gas turbine all the time. Remember, I told you at times the wind blows or the sun shines, and you use those renewable sources because they produce less carbon. Maybe now I have enough remaining life that on days when it's very hot, I can actually run that turbine a lot hotter and make more money. And that's what we're doing with this thing called Dispatch Optimizer, giving us an extra $1 million to $3 million. This is the actual client of profit a year. I get value. Last one I'll do, because we had another performance prediction, but I'll do the optimization one. What I'm looking at there is the grid itself. So I can get all the load frequencies, the transmission line flow. I can see what the forecast is, and I can use that to optimize, how do I get higher grid utilization, at the same time with lower cost. And that's saving millions per year. So you see here, the focus really is using the AI ML to solve the key problems using detection, prediction, and optimization, and then put it in a workflow that delivers value. Let's go to the next chart. So I've given you some examples of what we're doing right now. Now I know everybody looks at, what's out there. ChatGPT, generative AI. Wow. All right. What do we do with this new capability? Now we've been looking at this for a while. Everybody, says it's new. Well, it's new to them. A lot of this work started 2015, 2016. You look at the work OpenAI was doing, you look at the work others were doing on large language models, but OpenAI, worked at a level, given the funding they had, that allowed them to actually create capability that was actually, significant. The same with Google to some extent. Why it's game changing for us is because of three things. Remember, every time I look at these technologies, I look at the value we're thinking about. So the first capability this has is that the conversation you can have with it is natural. It does a few things. So in usually if I go to Google search bar, I type one question, and the next question I type will not be connected with the question above. I've got to rephrase the entire question. ChatGPT will remember, these large language models will remember the context. You can hold a conversation. Now the conversation, I can say, give me an answer as though I was a grade 6 student. Give me an answer as though I was a master's student, a PhD student, a seasoned engineer. I can have it, basically be democratized, where it could address the concerns of many based upon their persona, their level of understanding, giving them value at their level. That's democratization. And the conversational flow is the fact that it can hold 5 or 6 questions and keep the context. Powerful. It means AI can be used by everyone. Second is, what does it do? It can summarize data from you. It can do question and answer. You can ask it a question, it answers you. It can classify things. It can say, this problem seems to be this type of failure. And it can create, it can write things for you, write code for you, write text for you, write research reports for you, write sales brochures for you. And because it can write code, it can do actions. Remember what I told you before, AI ML, it's all about, can I detect, can I predict, can I optimize, but I got to do an action. This thing can write in Fortran, in Java, write the code to take the action. And the last thing is that because this is a pre-trained, so, when you look at GPT, it's generative pre-trained, which means the model has been trained. People have spent hundreds of millions of dollars to train it. I just need to train it with a little bit of data and I can get the value, much lower cost to me, right? And a great time to value. So what can I do with it? Imagine customer self-service. A customer can go in, have a conversation, ask a question. For instance, it can say, I just bought new washing machine. Oh my God, right now I'm looking at the manual. The manual is 90 pages. I just want to figure out 2 things. How do I actually use the auto wash capability? Comes back right away. Self-service. Customized marketing and sales. It can feed it information about calling. It can feed it information about what I'm looking for when I go for a car. And it can take that information, give me a customized, this is the car you want. Here's the price point you want. Here's total cost of ownership. Here's the cost you'll have now. Put it all together in a way that I understand it. Then I can say, I'm really worried about financing. It can keep up with that and say, well, you can use these different forms of financing. Design support. The part you see there is a part that NASA created. So they are asking, they need to support parts in space. And they ask ChatGPT capabilities, large language models, to build it. That's what it looks like. You'll say that looks funny. However, it's the lightest way it could be done. It has the greatest strength it could be done, and it was the cheapest way to design it. Amazing. Things we humans wouldn't see. And the last is software development. You can have a large language model be a peer programmer. It looks over your shoulder. It says, did you do this correctly? Rewrite that line, or you can tell it, you write these 10 lines and you look over its shoulder. There's a power. This will open a new era of AI and business transformation, and it's beginning now. So I'll end here. I hope you get the 2 key points. One is there's an enormous opportunity happening. I give you the example in the energy space. You'll find it in biomedical. You'll find it in manufacturing. You'll find it in even entertainment. You could find it in teaching. The metaverse is a whole new space for us. Can you use AI ML not only to figure out what are the problems it solves, but get value by acting on those problems. So with that, I wish you a great conference. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you very much for your time. I'll turn it back to you, Jessica.
Since 1986, the Black Engineer of the Year Awards has recognized thousands of people in scientific and technical careers for outstanding achievements in science, technology, engineering, and math fields. Winners have shown an incredible ability to leverage innovation and focus their vision to achieve full potential and opportunity in their careers, industries, and communities. As we gear up to mark our 40th anniversary, our focus remains to showcase hidden talent, promote significant achievement in STEM, and help employers develop and retain minorities with technical skills.
Welcome back. Our first session of the day is the CHIPS and Science Act, the opportunity of a lifetime for HBCUs. The moderator of this session is Dr. Victor McCrary, Vice President of Research at the University of the District of Columbia. Joining him will be Susan Margulies, Assistant Director at the Directorate of Engineering for the National Science Foundation, and Nate Cruz, CEO of Business Transformation Consulting Services.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Victor McCrary. I'm the Vice President for Research at the University of the District of Columbia, the nation's capital, only public HBCU, as well as the Vice Chair of the National Science Board. Today, we're going to talk about the CHIPS and Science Act, and it really an opportunity of a lifetime for our historically Black colleges and universities. I have two preeminent guests who are here to discuss that. And so I'll have each of them introduce themselves. The first one is Dr. Susan Margulies, who I consider the premier engineer of the country. Susan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Hi, my name's Susan Margulies, and I lead the Engineering Directorate at the National Science Foundation, which funds over 40% of the basic engineering across all the fields of engineering, as well as engineering education. So I'm here actually to represent all of NSF, which was established over 70 years ago to promote the research as well as workforce training across all disciplines in science and engineering. So it's my pleasure to be here and to represent the agency at this auspicious time. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan. Now, my next guest is Mr. Nathaniel Cruz. Again, I want to say he's kind of the premier coach of the United States in terms of bringing different types of stakeholders together. The CHIPS and Science Act will bring universities, will bring businesses together, government, local governments, venture capitalists. So, Nate, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Nate Cruz, and I work for BTCS. I do executive coaching that helps companies transform into the next entity really focusing in on innovation and how to establish great partnerships and continually add value out to your customer set. I currently work as an executive coach in many large organizations. I also am a senior technology instructor for Caltech CTME, which when they're adult education organizations. We focus on innovation, we focus on system engineering, we focus on AI and a lot of leading technologies and how organizations can integrate that into their organization to add endearing value to their customer set. So it's my pleasure to be here today and to participate.
Thank you, Nate. So let's just get right in it, and I welcome our audience. So Susan, a lot has been made about the CHIPS and Science Act since it was signed by President Biden last August. A lot of people still don't understand chips. Some people don't know the difference between the CHIPS and Science Act and Mr. Chips and chocolate chips. And we've heard a lot about it. But seriously, it's really landmark legislation, and it will really impact our HBCUs and MIs. Could you give us a little bit overview of the CHIPS and Science Act?
Sure. What I'd like to do is explain what the CHIPS and Science Act is and what it covers, and then some opportunities that have launched since last August when the CHIPS and Science Act was signed into law. So the CHIPS and Science Act is a huge and important opportunity. It's a recognition of the importance of both the training as well as the fundamental research that needs to happen to bring industries back to the US to lead nationally and internationally. It's about expanding the geography of innovation through regional innovation. It's about investing in domestic science, technology, engineering, and math talent like never before. It's about strengthening that lab to market pipeline. And it's about investing and increasing in the basic science and engineering research that lays the foundation for the future. So some of the topics that are covered, of course, people think about semiconductors and microelectronics. That's the CHIPS part of the CHIPS and Science. But it also supports research and workforce development in areas like biotechnology, manufacturing, advanced energy and industrial efficiency, climate change and clean energy, in areas like risk and resilience research, natural as well as human-initiated disaster prevention and mitigation, and other emerging areas like critical materials, sustainable chemistry, clean water, precision agriculture, and as well engineering, biology, and manufacturing. The and science is huge. It's not only CHIPS. It also created for the National Science Foundation a new directorate, the Directorate of Technology, Innovation, and Partnership. It increased overall NSF authorization beyond the new directorate to increase research in all of these areas of the CHIPS and science. And with it, we have the opportunity to really unlock science and technology breakthroughs and drive our economy and national security forward for decades to come. So what I'd like to do is just highlight some things. So what have we done with this? Well, those opportunities in research include launching a brand new initiative that's in partnership with industry. Intel, Ericsson, IBM, and Samsung have signed on so far for a $40 million opportunity in the future of semiconductors. The first set of awards will be coming out shortly, and look for a new opportunity in next year, early in the fall. Future manufacturing is a second thing that was launched this year with many areas of focus in the areas of the CHIPS and science. Over $30 million for new awards will be announced shortly, and look for announcements for the next round in the fall. Biofoundries is a third opportunity. It enables access to infrastructure and resources now for advancing modern biology and biotechnology. How do we get from lab to fab and creating those infrastructures that are sorely needed in this particular area? If you happen to be at or know people who are at non-R1 institutions, we have in the engineering directorate, Engineering Research Initiation Awards. Those are awards that support new investigators to ready them for many other types of programs that are available. And those proposals are due in September. So above all, I hope that you'll take away that you reach out to me personally, and I'll connect you to those at NSF who can help connect you. Because this is about HBCUs, I wanted to highlight just a couple of programs that are so important for HBCUs. Excellence in Research or HBCU EIR, is available there to support capacity building, funds research projects that are aligned with all of the NSF research programs. And as you see, there's a highlight not only in those in the CHIPS and Science Act, but in everything. Help us help you build the capacity at your campus. Those proposals are due in October. Just 2 more. HBCU undergraduate program has multiple tracks. Look for those if you're an HBCU that's primarily an undergraduate institution. And the research experiences for undergraduates. That's where the light turns on in the eyes of our undergraduate students to pursue engineering and other science careers and to stay with it beyond undergraduate into the career paths as well as onto graduate school. There's a mega REU, or Research Experience for Undergraduate site, that is led by Morgan State, thank you very much, there, which is focused on, it's a consortium of 14 HBCUs and 1 HSI program, and I encourage you to take a look at that. That mega site focuses on smart and connected cities. There are many more to take part of. So back to you, because there's so much that we're doing, and that's just a taste.
Well, Susan, thank you. Oh, wow. There is a lot of things going out. And just for all of our folks in the audience, the HBCU Up notice to sign up to research.gov went out today from NSF to a large number of stakeholders. So if you got that email, not only sign up, but please pass it on to your colleagues. But Nate, I'm going to now ask you, Susan mentioned a number of stakeholders that are going to be part and catalyzed because of CHIPS and Science. We are going to have companies, Taiwan Semiconductor, Micron, Intel. We're going to have small universities, community colleges working together. We're going to have local business people. Now, we like to all say we all know how to work together, but in the past, it has not always been that way and has united with what's the vision of the CHIPS and Science Act. And also to our communities, particularly our HBCU and MI communities, a lot of people are not aware of both the careers that are going to be funded and catalyzed by CHIPS and Science and the opportunities, not only in semiconductor, because some people have thought it's just semiconductor manufacturing, but it's broader than that. How do we message out to these different communities, and what kind of advice would you give places like NSF or local governments or other agencies and business about the opportunities that CHIPS and Science brings to our community?
Okay, thank you, Victor. So the first thing I would tell you, the one thing is we need to focus on outcomes. And one of the outcomes is that we want to have an effective, tailored message out to our stakeholders, what the CHIPS and Science Act is, and what I would call the WIFM, what's in it for them, and how they can contribute. And this is an open, welcoming message that goes out to all of these parties and stakeholders, letting them know that we want to bring you in, regardless of where you're at. Even if you're at ground zero in your knowledge and your skill set and your ability to support that, come in. We'll work with you. And then we'll do an assessment of where they are and the stakeholders and bring them in and start developing a community or ecosystem that can be utilized later on in the development and partnership and things that we could do later on. That is what we want to do there to get the message out. Now, that is the what of what we want to have here. The how is some of the following things. We want to have an awareness message. So we want to use a multimedia blitz of what the CHIPS Act is and out to many different vendors, social medias, websites, LinkedIn, campus campaigns, any way to get the message out to them to let it know what's out there, what's benefit, how it can help you long term here. Highlight the relevancy that this is a significant act and how it can improve the lives of your organizations, the communities of many. If you get involved, you get the right skill set, and you become valued members and contribute to this very amazing program here. And also, too, as we go through and to get people engaged, showcase some of the successes that have already happened. Show how other HBUs, and Susan has provided an amazing message of all of the companies and universities that have been involved with that. And then as we go through and send these messages out here, welcoming people in and also engage industry partners to come in and also bring them into part of the communication message. Have them send it out to their partners. have their own lieutenants and captains within organizations that are familiar with these various HBCUs and minority institutions that may have graduated from there, and get them to engage those organizations to encourage them to be involved in this here. We also need not to forget and ignore faculty and researchers. They are going to be out there communicating out to their communities of researchers, of getting things done to make sure that they bring things involved here. And also we need to have a ground root support activity from the student involvements, the students at the high school level, the students at the university level. We also can't forget the adult learners who are still coming back here and trying to get information as we go through here. Another thing that we have to go through here and look at is leveraging our network of alumni in various organizations here at some of these various institutions. They can be some of the people who can translate the language and help us to position the messages out within these institutions so they get the more impactful message. And as we do these communication messages, hopefully we could go through and get things done perfectly the first time. But we also want to continually look at our message, look how it lands with the audience or the stakeholders we're looking for, and look at ways of constantly improving and better providing more information, providing them Slack sites or other things of information that they can go and pull down and draw from along the way. But this also should be around a communication strategy that all of us who are contributing to this, what is our involvement, what's our participation, and how I can help. And that would be my humble contributions and suggestions in this area.
Well, Nate, I really appreciate that, because I know, the CHIPS and Science Act is between the Department of Commerce and the National Science Foundation. And so I'm sure for those who are looking at this today, they are working on coordinating the strategies. I would also interject that one of the groups we also ought to get is the minority technical organizations, where a number of them are having meetings coming up. So the National Organization of Black Chemists and Chemical Engineers. I used to work in the semiconductor industry, so those are important. The SOCNIS conference that is coming up, Great Minds in STEM. Both of those reach out to the Latino community. And so there are a number of these organizations because, as Susan said earlier, CHIPS and Science is a vast STEM enterprise, and it's going to need a lot of talent. So communicating to those will be very good. Susan, your director, Dr. Setharabhan Panchanathan, has done an excellent job of communicating what NSF is doing. He has always talked about, how do we go from lab to community, talking about the impact of research on our communities. He's done a great job in terms of making sure that we're addressing the issues of the day and reaching to all segments of the community. One of the things he's emphasized, and I know he's told down to his team, is how do we build those partnerships, and how will it enhance current activities at small schools? And since most of our audience today is HBCUs and MIs, from where you sit, how do you make that happen, and how do you enhance those activities with HBCUs and MIs around CHIPS and Science?
Thank you for this opportunity. I'd like to amplify the message both that you've had, Vic, as well as that Nate has said about the importance of raising awareness and to communicating not only through your networks, but also through your alumni networks. That's a wonderful, wonderful topic. So some of those partnerships come through those. I'd like to say that we're focused at NSF about what are the problems that we need to really be focused on. Who are the people that we bring and that we can benefit, who benefit by these interactions, and who are the partners who can take us there. And sometimes it's industry, both large as well as startups. Sometimes it's other agencies as well as philanthropic organizations, and those partnerships are key. Identifying the areas of commonality and win-win, multi-way win opportunities. In order to move quickly, we need to be leveraging we need to be linking, and we need to be launching. And I'd like to share with you just a few examples of what we're doing now, and both in the framework of partnerships as well as the things that we've initiated. So several examples for partnerships related to the semiconductor workforce. 3 examples. The first is the SRC, Semiconductor Research Corporation, and NSF have created a partnership to support semiconductor research experiences, I mentioned that before, REUs, for undergraduates focused in semiconductors. And we funded 6 sites in partnership with them in fiscal year 23. Those are sites that are going to be utilized this summer and next summer. And the opportunity to submit more proposals for consideration by NSF and co-funded then by SRC will happen again this upcoming year. So look for those. 2 other partnerships. A $10 million partnership with Intel related to workforce development has spawned an announcement that just came out. It's a Dear Colleague letter. It's one way that we draw attention to existing programs that have new opportunities. A Dear Colleague letter, or affectionately known as a DCL. It's called ETSI, actually, and Enhancing Engineering Technologies and Advanced Semiconductor Manufacturing Technician Education. So Vic, you mentioned this before we logged on. There's a wonderful program in the EDU Directorate of Advanced Technological Education, ATE. They also have scholarships in science, technology, and engineering and mathematics, STEM. This is a Dear Colleague letter saying we, in collaboration with Intel, are promoting this, and we will be able to fund more. Lastly, a $10 million partnership with Micron is focused on looking at instructional materials, and a Dear Colleague letter has come out for equitable and transformative approaches to educating semiconductor workforce. Look for those. If you yourself are not creating that content, show those opportunities to others. There are 2 that I'd like to mention that are large-scale investments, now not in workforce training, but in research. CREST, Centers for Research Excellence in Science and Technology. It enhances the research capabilities at minority-serving institutions through the establishment of centers to integrate education with research. There's a new Dear Colleague letter that's out. That's a partnership with the Engineering Directorate and the EDU Directorate. These are centers for excellence that are focused on engineering research. We need to cultivate and train the leaders in emerging engineering research areas of tomorrow. The focus areas on microelectronics and semiconductors, wireless, and clean energy technologies. Those proposals are due in December. And finally, there's a research infrastructure. It's recognized that sometimes what you need is equipment. And how can you build that research capability? So their proposals due for a CREST HBCU research infrastructure for science and engineering, or HBCU RISE, RISE. Again, if you have trouble finding these and it goes by so quickly, reach out to me, Susan Margulies. I will connect you with the links that you need. Thank you.
Susan, that's fantastic. So Nate, coming off what Susan has said, dovetailing, this is going to require partnerships between HBCUs and PWIs. And I can say, for example, the University of the District of Columbia, we're part of this Mid-Atlantic Semiconductor Hub, which is a consortium of PWIs, including folks like Columbia and University of Pennsylvania, because partnerships are going to be extremely important. No one institution, no matter what type or caliber of the institution, can do this alone. And that's how America has faced these challenges. We've worked across. How do we, what's it going to take for HBCUs and MIs in partnering with PWIs, folks who are maybe R2 or not there, working with R1s? From your point of view, how do we make those partnerships? How do we initiate them, and how do we make them work?
Okay, well, thank you very much, Vic. So first of all, let me go back and just be very simplistic here. What's partnerships? What effective partnerships? Typically, 2 entities bring complementary skill sets or value together to add value to your customer set on the outcome. So the first thing I would encourage the HBCUs is to do a SWOT, or inventory analysis of what are your skill sets, what are your technologies, what are your training, what is the value proposition that you bring to the table, and grow it and develop that and align it closely with the CHIPS initiative and show how you can add value here. The other thing I would say, after you go through that, you decide what direction you want to go from with the chips. Are you going to get deeper and become expertise in the areas of the chip and the manufacturing of the chip? Or are you going to be part of those that are going to be developing the products and the complex embedded systems that the chips will be used for, and how to integrate that into those other systems? And then that will help you identify who are the partners that you should be reaching out to and working with and going forward here. Typically, I would very strongly encourage the HBCUs to partner with themselves, do an inventory and assessment of all the skill sets and expertise that you bring together, and develop a network amongst yourselves and decide what industries. The automotive industries is going to use a lot of chips. I talked to a friend of mine. Everything from the key itself was going to be a smart device to the vehicle itself. Also, with the emerging development within the military, there's many different complex systems, and be able to speak their language and how to do modular development, and how do the chips feed into that along the way, speaking their language and understanding of the situation, and then also understanding what are their pain points, what problems are you having, and then show them how you can fix your short-term problems, and then revolutionize and say, this is how we can even make it better so these problems never come up. So I would say get those partnerships in general just to set things up. Then from a programmatic standpoint, when you have a partnership, identify shared goals. What do we have in common? How can we come with a complementary goal that makes the difference between the one and the one together is much more valuable than two? Engage in network events and how you would go through and go forward with that. Then from a legal standpoint, we always have to have documentation. We want to have a memorandum of agreement of what we do, what you do, what I do, where do you end, where I begin. Then we need to go and work together in joint research activities here, where we jointly go through and demonstrate capabilities or develop and evolve relationships together. And then beyond that, for the program and for the next generation of those workers here, come up with internships and co-op programs that they can participate in to learn and join from this. And again, I always bring us back to the faculty and the researchers here to be part of the partnership. So understand how they can go forth and look and get things done, And then to help us and guide the partnerships at the overall very program enterprise level, establish industry advisory panels and boards to give guidance to this whole mission, to tell us the directions to go and the directions not to go as we go here and do these things.
Well, I will tell you this. This is fantastic. But you know what? Because, we've just established an HBCU S&T Council last year, which has 10 institutions. And I will let both of you and our audience know. But you know what? With all of this excitement and everything, one thing that Chips and Science hasn't done is be able to extend a 24-hour clock. And we are running out of time. So I want to say thank you to both Susan Margulis, Nate Cruz, to our audience. We will be talking about Chips and Science in February at BEYA again. But in the meantime, please look out to the resources that they have offered and the suggestions that they have. And we look forward to everybody here to be part of Chips and Science, because that is how we're going to move our nation forward and get back into the game. Thank you for participating today, and I look forward to you all again. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Here are 6 reasons why you should attend the Women of Color STEM Conference. 1. Meet experts and influencers. WOC attendees come from all rungs of the career ladder. While you won't necessarily meet your business idol, you will meet accomplished women who are experts in their field, one of whom might just be your next mentor. 2. Break out of your comfort zone. Sessions like the Woman to Woman, Up Close and Personal is one example of the type of event that will challenge you to look at your career in a whole new way. It is just the type of event you need to forge new ways of thinking. 3. Educational opportunities. WOC seminars and workshops offer new ideas and trends, exposure to different point of views, new ways to be more productive, opportunities to learn from others, and ways to improve skills and knowledge. 4. Networking with peers. WOC offers opportunities to mix and mingle and form new relationships. It is a valuable resource for best practices to uncover new ideas and spark inspiration when you get to know each other over coffee, lunch, or cocktails at a WOC event. 5. Position yourself as an expert. Frequent attendees to WOC are often asked to lead workshops at the conference. This goes a long way in establishing you as an expert in your field. You'll boost your reputation among your peers, clients, and employer. They'll feel good about their association with you. 6. Have fun. Enjoyment while managing career growth can be rewarding and fun. A little fun with interesting people can be very powerful.
Welcome back. Remember to stay engaged using the QR code in the top left corner and chat options. Leave comments, questions, and even words of support as we continue through today's program. In our next session, PWI and HBCU research partnerships, we will be exploring the importance of creating meaningful partnerships within institutions. The moderator of this discussion is Dr. Wayne Gersey, Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion at Michigan Technological University. He will be joined by Dr. Isaac Porsche, National Security Analysis Mission Area Executive at Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory, and Dr. Jia-Jun Xu, Professor at the Department of Mechanical Engineering at the University of the District of Columbia. Welcome.
Thank you, Jessica. Just to make sure that I have I'm glad to be here with you all. My name is Wayne Gersey. I'm the outgoing Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion at Michigan Technological University and the incoming Vice President for Equity and Inclusion at Quinnipiac University. It's my pleasure to be here, and I think it's even appropriate to share with you that to continue what we're going to be talking about today, to let you know that I'm at Tuskegee University in Tuskegee, Alabama, fostering some of the initiatives that we will be discussing today. I'm glad to be joined here by my fellow panelists. And before I turn it over to them, I want to make some opening remarks related to what we're going to be talking about today. So for the United States to maintain its global leadership position, we must preserve a vibrant, future-oriented research ecosystem along with the well-developed STEM workforce pipeline. This task requires a broad, diverse pool of highly capable employees in all areas, especially in STEM. So to achieve this goal, broadening the participation of students from underrepresented groups in national research and STEM is necessary, and it requires key partnerships. So these partnerships need to be mutually beneficial and authentic to partnerships between historically Black colleges, universities, and predominantly white universities, as well as tribal colleges and Hispanic serving and other minority serving institutions. And if we do that, we'll be able to provide a unique opportunity to implement goals of diversifying our workforce. So today, this panel will shed light on how PWIs can benefit from recognizing and leveraging the strengths of the HBCUs. So I'll start there by giving my fellow panelists, Dr. Porsche and Dr. Xu, an opportunity to make opening comments. So Dr. Porsche, do you want to start?
Thanks, Wayne. Hopefully you can hear me okay. If not, send me a note in the chat. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to represent my organization, Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Lab. My personal background makes this topic of extreme interest. I began my career as an undergraduate major at an HBCU, Southern University, and then transitioned to a master's at Cal Berkeley, and eventually finished my PhD from the University of Michigan. From there, I worked a number of places: General Motors, 21 years at the RAND Corporation and FFRDC, but also recently at Penn State Applied Research Lab, where I had the pleasure of meeting Wayne for 2 years, and now at the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Lab. The last two are what's called university affiliated research centers. I also want to send a note to Colin Paris. There's a coincidence. When I was a young master's student at Berkeley, Colin was a senior PhD student and personally mentored me, and to the point where he sat in almost all of my classes. So I probably wouldn't be here today if it weren't for him. So without a doubt, his award last year was well received. One of the key things that I'm focused in on as an executive, I'd say for the past 4 years, I've been asked to what extent can we increase the partnerships with HBCUs and take advantage of the talent there. And so this has been sort of a lifelong journey for me. So I don't want to take up too much airtime. I'll turn it over to back to you, Wayne, to get back to Professor Xu.
Professor Xu. So thank you, Isaac. So Professor Xu, if you want to make some opening remarks, please go ahead.
Yes, good morning, everyone. It's my great pleasure to be here this morning, and thank you for, giving me the opportunity to share a little bit of my experience working at HBCU and working with some predominantly white universities through different projects and activities. So a little bit about myself. So I'm a professor of mechanical engineering here at UDC, historically Black college and university in the nation's capital. So I graduated from University of Maryland, College Park, which is PWI, and I had a pleasure, through my projects to work with my previous professors at the University of Maryland, and to work with, their different labs over the years. And I'm excited to share some of the things we learned in that experience. And also, I want to give a big shout out to NASA, especially the MURA program, which has been a continuous support and trust to our university. They have, their commitment to us has really helped reshaping our university standing, and also helping the university emerge as a research active university. I thank you, and I will turn the time back to Dr. Kersey.
Thank you, Dr. Xu. So I want to start with some quick hits here. First, the historical significance of HBCUs. So HBCUs are 1890s. They're called 1890s because there was the first Morrill Act, and because separate but equal was in place. A second act had to be created to fund historically Black colleges and universities. So HBCUs have played a pivotal role in providing educational opportunities for African Americans since the Reconstruction era. They were founded when opportunities for higher education were limited or denied to Black individuals, and they have served as beacons of hope and empowerment throughout history. So that's their historical significance. What I want to just quickly touch on is the economic output of HBCUs. So HBCUs have contributed significantly to the national economy. The reports estimate that HBCUs generated billions of dollars in economic output through their operations, including spending on goods, services, and construction projects. An ABC report of 2023 indicated that HBCUs collectively contributed over $15 billion annually to the U.S. economy. When it comes to job creations, HBCUs directly employ over 50,000 individuals and indirectly support over 150,000 jobs. This is very important to point out to me personally, because I think there's a inherited narrative that exists about the quality of the education or the contributions that HBCUs make to our economy. People are giving shout outs. One of my sponsors and mentor, retired Vice Admiral Paul Sullivan, always talked about the national imperative of diversifying our workforce and not leveraging our domestic diverse workforce enough to get there. it becomes an imperative. So I want your response to what do we say to folks who are continually perpetuating the narrative that HBCUs are less prestigious, and what do we say? What should we be saying to them in response to that?
Wayne, I'll take it first. You know, two parts, just as a setup to that. We are in a great power competition. The United States is competing with great powers, other countries, China, Russia, for developing, in particular, STEM, but specifically engineers for competing in the world. This is a standing the United States has enjoyed for decades and decades and decades. We have been the country that has been on the receiving end of so much talent out there, but now we're competing for that. So, you know, it's a mathematical problem. If you want to create the greatest number of engineers in your own country, you have to go to the underrepresented organizations, the underrepresented groups, and get more from them. If you look at some of the literature that's coming out from China, they are actively promoting that they want to have more women as engineers, maybe 50% of their engineers be women. That's an approach that helps compete in this great power competition. So when you turn it back to in the United States, how do we get more out of underrepresented groups? You have to go to the schools that have had a greater track record with producing that. HBCUs, universities that historically produce more women, people of color. So there's a natural argument that says these are the institutions, HBCUs in particular, that will help you win that great power competition. The other point I want to make is going back to what you said, Wayne, about the historical role of HBCUs. An odd story, I hate to bring in family members, but I'll bring in family members. My father taught at Southern for 35 years. He was not educated at Southern. He was very fortunate in the 50s to be educated at Notre Dame, one of the first electrical engineers that came out of Notre Dame, mostly because Louisiana did not admit African Americans to the only colleges of engineering. So, you know, I would not be an electrical engineer if my father wasn't an electrical engineer. My father went on to teach at Southern and produce many African American electrical engineers, in addition to my siblings, who also came from him and became electrical engineers. And all of my siblings have either worked for the government or taught at the Air Force Academy or helped the defense industry. So I can point to you one example of one individual in engineering that can spawn hundreds, if not thousands of other engineers. So any institution, particularly HBCUs that are quite that effective, that can help us in this great power competition by creating even just one more engineer, it could lead to a generational impact in this 50-year competition that we're going to have.
Thank you, Isaac. Dr. Zhu, do you want to add to this conversation?
Yeah, I echo what Dr. Porshi said, and also it's great statistics, Dr. Gersey, you just shared. You know, I didn't know that, you know, before I become a faculty member in HBCU, but I realized the importance of our role at HBCU to, you know, educate and to engage minority students and to really provide the opportunity for them to be successful in their future career. I guess from my perspective, you know, as a faculty member working at HBCU, and you know, in general speaking, HBCUs are usually under-resources compared to, you know, many other research-intensive universities. So I think it's a great opportunity to work with major research universities, you know, to really helps, I guess, not just for the students, because they really benefit by working, you know, joint mentorship. Sometimes, you know, even access to resources they don't have at HBCUs, you know, for their study. So that's you know, great benefits to the students at HBCU, but also for faculty members and the university in general. This kind of encourages a lot of interactions and also exchange of knowledge, because you know, I think there is great talent in at HBCUs, students and faculty members that they deserve better access to resources to help them become successful. I have, this is a kind of, personal example. I have a student working in my lab. He is an African-American student, came from a totally unrated STEM major. He somehow came to UDC and decided to pursue engineering degree. And then through the interaction with, some major research university in my project, he worked with another PhD student at another university. And through that interaction, he kind of get interested and he kind of inspired to continue. So he finishing his master here this summer, and he's going to be continuing as a PhD in mechanical engineering at UDC. So I think that's kind of showed me that the impact we can create to our students through those partnership and to providing access to resources to our students through those collaborations. So yeah.
Thank you. So that's a nice dovetail into the next topic. So collaborations with these potential partnerships. What should they look like? So I can tell you from my personal experience. I remember early on when I was young in my career, sitting down with Dr. Robin Kroger, who's now the provost at Western Carolina University. At the time, she was the dean of engineering at North Carolina A&T. And we're having a conversation about how to build partnerships. And one of the things she shared was the mistake that PWIs make in these relationships being transactional and being in response to an RFP for a sponsoring agency where they need a buddy that's an HBCU or MSI or a tribal, and how disingenuous that came across, or the idea that what can I do for you rather than how can I learn from you to build meaningful relationships. I think that's the mistake people tended to make, like PWI administrators and leadership tended to make when it came to developing these relationships, and how it was such a turnoff for people like Dr. Krogan. I don't want to speak for her in building these relationships, because it was only a one-way benefit. And that demonstrated the lack of respect or consideration there was for the HBCUs to her when she interacted with folks who came with that attitude. So I've taken that to heart, and in every place I've gone, I really try to work on creating collaborative, mutual, co-winning relationships with HBCU partners. That's why I'm here. Showing up. I mean, in return, we also need a commitment back from the HBCUs. So grassroots, these relationships, the sauce making happens at the faculty and the research level, right? So grassroots realized, but leadership sponsored. So leadership on both sides showing up when delegations come to campus to build the relationships. When a leader shows up, a president or a provost, when these meetings are happens to say, hey, I support this, then folks will follow whenever possible. So I'll stop there, and I want your reaction, like your thoughts and reactions to how should these relationships look.
I'll defer to Professor Zhu first.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, I think, Dr. Gracie, you mentioned a great point. It has to be mutually beneficial, like in any relationship, right? So I think oftentimes that is a key to success to any collaboration, any partnership. Personally, I think I guess from my personal experience, I would say for HBCUs is really has to look at your own strengths, because we have a huge pool of talented students and faculty members here at HBCU. Although we may be under, resources wise, we may be limited compared to the PWI, but I think we have the talents that can really contribute to make the project successful. So I think from my experience working with them, we have to be clear that we want our students, we and our faculty member, whoever involved in those projects to be successful. So we want to make sure the projects are going to be engaged, resources are going to be allocated, have to be beneficial to them. So I think that's something we have to make it clear in the beginning. And also, I think from my personal experience that working with them, there may be, I think it's throughout the course of collaboration, they generally agree that, they appreciate that, that we are upfront with them when we work on something, when we pursue a grant opportunity together. For example, when we work on some projects together, we upfront with what we need, what I think will be beneficial to our students. That will actually help make the project successful at the end, and then eventually brings out more opportunities. So I'll give you kind of a short example, like here we have this collaboration with UMD, and one of the things that we really leveraged in the beginning is that we don't have really good clean room fabrication center here on campus, and when we first started, but we're able to leverage the resources over there, and our students get a great training. We have great publications at the end, and really helps bring up the quality of education here and research. And then with that foundation, we're able to pursue other opportunities. So now we have our own state-of-art nanotechnology facilities, advanced manufacturing facilities on campus. So that enable us to work with them, and we can lead many projects that with the PWI as our partner. So I think another thing I would, I guess that's one of the reasons I give a shout out to NASA is that, federal agencies like NSF, DOD also do have similar program that actually encourages the HBCU as the lead of a project. So it encourages us to reach out to the PWIs, to work with them, to look at how they can benefit HBCU working together on a project. So I think those opportunities are great for HBCUs to really develop their own strengths and also to develop a mutually beneficial partnership with the PWI.
Yeah. And Wayne, let me just jump on that. I know time is getting short here, but a couple of points. Emphasizing again, developing those relationships early ahead of opportunities is almost mandatory to the exchange of students and faculty, so that you are interacting on a long-term basis in terms of the people that are invested in the interaction is key. And I want to get back to your earlier question about the pros and the cons, HBCUs and PWIs, although we're talking about interaction. The unique thing about HBCUs is they're spread out across the country in high concentration areas of people of color. And they also are commonly very close to each other, the PWIs and a key HBCU, due to the original purpose of HBCU. So what I would say to people wondering more about the value of HBCUs is just the quantity and an opportunity of students that can come out of those universities because they're so close to the population centers that are being targeted.
Thank you, Isaac. I think we have some questions from the audience, so like to get to them. Dr. Ports, have you found contract administration one of the biggest challenges working with HBCU? Any mitigating recommendations?
I can't say one way or another on that, other than the contract side of it is difficult anywhere. It was very difficult. It's difficult here. It's difficult at Penn State, but we have staff. And so it really comes down to, do you have dedicated staff that can focus in on that, regardless of where you're at? And sometimes that dedication is just the passion of one or two individuals. Sometimes it takes real numbers. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, just to interject real quick, because I kept hearing the narrative about HBCUs are underfunded. We have to find out why, instead of making assumptions of how that's a reflection of effort or commitment. I'm always the kind of person who's you got to ask the question why instead of reacting to the outcome. So let's go to the next question. Dr. Porsche, thank you for your answer. Big kudos to your father who taught my neighbor, a Southern University electrical engineer alum. Small world, indeed. Dr. Porsche, you have a fan club. Let's go to the next one. How can experts in STEM without an engineering degree engage with HBCU as faculty or research? Who wants to tackle that one?
I can try it. How can experts in STEM without engineering degree engage? Yeah, I think, I don't think engineering degree is a must, but I think a passion about STEM or engineering is a must. I have seen students come from totally different background. I mean, I can name a long list of them in my, short time at the university. Many of them goes to top, Ivy League universities afterwards. So I think it's not a must, but I think, yeah, if you have a passion about learning an engineering degree or STEM degree in general, I think that will be that's the key to success. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we have room for one more. Dr. Porsche again. Dr. Shu, we should feel slighted. Is JHU APLU establishing an MOU with HBCUs? The DMV area has several HBCUs within commuting distance to APL. I'll let him answer that.
Absolutely interested in this. Absolutely have pursued this in advance. Absolutely have interaction with Morgan State and others. And so that's a big yes, and a big yes to more.
So I want to put a portion of plug in here for ARL, former employer for both Isaac and I. We had an MOU. We have an MOU with UDC that we hope to continue to build on. I still say we, because you never really leave where you work. I think there's also other opportunities because, for example, there's many UARCs like ARL who have facilities in the DC metro area where those partnerships can work. Here at Michigan Tech, I'm proud to say that we did develop a MOU with UDC. It shouldn't be surprising. One of my big sponsors and mentors, Dr. Victor McQuarrie, works there. So wherever I go, there's going to be partnerships. And then also we are working on one, hopefully with Tuskegee. But you don't start with the MOU. You start with building the relationship. And it's kind of like dating. And then if you feel and you get to find convergent interests, then you move to maybe a more formal relationships. I think the approach is the same with tribal colleges and universities and Hispanic serving and minority serving institutions. See, HBCUs, MSIs, and HSIs are a lot like those of us who were so happy when caller ID got invented, because we kind of know that when people call, we have a suspicion on what their motivation is. And when you build a relationship, then the motivation is genuine. Therefore, you're not suspicious of it. So you build the relationship first, and then you make the ask. And that takes work. That takes effort. Just like with other networks that naturally seem to develop. There's a natural progression from that engagement. I know we're at the bottom of the hour, so I wanted to give Dr. Zhu and Dr. Porsche final comments before we close it up.
Nothing more to add. Great forum, great interacting, and feel free to reach out to me for those who are interested in further partnerships with the APL.
Yeah. Thank you for the time. I think that's a great discussion. It's just the beginning of it. I think I definitely happy to answer any questions if you want to further discuss how HBCU can be part of this bigger dialogue. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining in, and we'll see you next year at BEYA in Baltimore.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne.
What if you could build your own city? a place where every child can find nurturing people to help them achieve their full potential, a place where every adult can access job training support, where health education is abundant, where social justice ruled the land, a place without limitations. Welcome. You have arrived at STEM City, USA. It is what every city should be, a safe and trusted community where you find people and resources to help you become everything you are and beyond. STEM City is unlike anything you have ever experienced. It is a digital twin of the world around you, only better. STEM City is about energy and soul renewal. It is more than a digital world. You can almost feel the power of live cultural events, music, and theater. STEM City promises a better future for children with caring mentors and hands-on activities with dedicated tutors to support our youth. STEM City is your passport to a healthy lifestyle with weekly events addressing our community's many issues. STEM City is your financial well-being with helpful information on wealth management, career advancement, job training, and so much more. STEM City is the community you deserve. It is the city where your dreams can come true. STEM City USA, a place in the sky that is accessible to all who reach for the stars.
Surprise unveiling, but we still have a lot of information and insights to get through. We have a fascinating talk coming up on the metaverse, its potential impact on our lives, and how we can prepare for it. Our speaker, Tyrone Taborn, is the CEO and CCO of Career Communications Group. He's a technology expert and a futurist who will be exploring this topic in depth.
It struck me a long time ago that if we're able to say kids act a certain way because of the negative influences in their lives, the role models that they see on the street corner and places like that, if we're willing to buy into negativity, then why can't we buy into positive things? We've built over the years a strong community of at least 30,000 active people that we can reach out to any given day. And why do they do this? Because they feel they're being part of this community. They are part of something greater, and that they're surrounded by people who are like-minded like them. We are where we are because of the progress of those who came before us, but we're not obligated to those who came before us. We're obligated where we are now and how we move forward. And how do we do this with integrity? How do we do this with a passion?
What if you could build your own city? A place where every child can find nurturing people to help them achieve their full potential. A place where every adult can access job training support. Where health education is abundant. Where social justice ruled the land. A place without limitations. Welcome. You have arrived at STEM City, USA. It is what every city should be. A safe and trusted community where you can find people and resources to help you become everything you are and beyond. STEM City is unlike anything you have ever experienced. It is a digital twin of the world around you, only better. STEM City is about energy and soul renewal. It is more than a digital world. You can almost feel the power of live cultural events, music, and theater. STEM City promises a better future for children with caring mentors, and hands-on activities with dedicated tutors to support our youth. STEM City is your passport to a healthy lifestyle, with weekly events addressing our community's many issues. STEM City is your financial well-being, with helpful information on wealth management, career advancement, job training, and so much more. STEM City is the community you deserve. It is the city where your dreams can come true. STEM City USA, a place in the sky that is accessible to all who reach for the stars.
Hello, I'm Tyrone Taborn, and welcome to the future. In the next few moments and minutes that I have with you, I would like to help explain what is the metaverse. I like to touch on things like the blockchain, but more importantly, I want to talk about what is the most transformational piece of technology that we have seen probably in many of your lifetimes, but certainly since we had the semiconductor and we were able to do the microchips back in 1958, 59, that allowed and is allowing for many of these transformational technologies that we see now to be built up on. The one I'm going to talk about today and what you're actually on, is a metaverse platform. It is a 2D low-res metaverse platform that will most likely be the leader in how we consume the metaverse. Now, you may think about that for a second. Think about, if you remember, VHS versus beta and those kind of debates that took place. But in a very serious way, this is one of the functional metaverses in the United States of America. And it started on the Women of Color platform in which you are here today. Our other metaverses include the BEYA, Black Engineer of the Year, and STEM City, which you see behind me. So let me talk to you for a second about what is a metaverse and what does it mean and how will this really impact you, your company, and particularly why this is so transformational. I mean, it's excites me to no end. I'm going to tell you a lot that you might think would take forever to do, but keep this in mind as well. You know, the birth of Bitcoin was only a 10-page email, basically a 10-page paper. And the first part of Bitcoin was really nothing more than an email. So the fundamental concept and the technology that existed even before Bitcoin and what Bitcoin was built on already existed, and that was called blockchain. More about that later. What is a metaverse? Well, metaverses have always been around us as long as we've had a community. And wherever communities existed, there was some type of metaverse. Metaverses are progressive and the technology may change, but the fundamentals of the metaverse have always been with us from the beginning of time. Here we are, though, at this moment. And I give 4, possibly 5 pieces that identify what is a metaverse. Without these elements, at least 4 of the 5 elements I'm about to give you, the metaverse, it is not a metaverse. One, more importantly, is having digital agency over yourself. On this platform right now, you can leave, you can go other places, you can engage in dialogue, you can jump over from this seminar and go to the Black Engineer or STEM City and engage with people real time. The ability to not be in a static environment, but a dynamic environment is a critical part of what we call digital agencies. And that means that you make the decision of what your experience will be with other people. These are not solo experiences. These are not experiences that you would have from a static website, but these are very interactive pieces. You, in fact, could engage in a dialogue right now. As you and I are talking, you can go to our chat that exists. And you can chat with one another in the metaverse, and you can also chat with each other on the other ways in which we're delivering this platform, such as in YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. So the first part of a metaverse is the digital agency. Tied into digital agency, very importantly, is that you control your digital information. And that is something that we look at further down the line. Who owns your data? You should. And in the metaverse, that's what's going to happen. And as I talk about blockchain, you will understand why the metaverse cannot ultimately exist fully without a blockchain, without sitting on top of a blockchain. Number two, what is a metaverse? Collaboration. Without collaboration, there is no metaverse. The metaverse means that a bunch of us can come in together. So I'd like to give this perfect example. What if you are sitting in a movie theater and you're watching the movie? Well, that's the web. You're sitting there, somebody's constructed this experience for you, and you simply sit back and watch it. Now, what if you can get up and go into that movie? Still, you have no control, but you're inside of that movie. Well, those are things like augmented reality, 3D, in some cases, virtual reality. That's that kind of experience. Now, what happens if everyone else in that theater can get up, go into the movie as well, talk to you and your friends that are within that experience can actually write the movie in real time, create new experiences, be able to work together and collaborate together. The collaboration is the second most important part of what is a metaverse. So that leads me to the third piece of what is a metaverse. A metaverse is a living piece. It is a living being. Now, because we can collaborate, that means, guess what? We can create digital content. The platform you came into changes based on the people who have come into that platform. Nobody knows what it's going to look like, but when we walk out of that platform, we have something a little bit different. For example, today, when we walk out of here, it was a blank canvas, but when we leave, and with your questions and with your participation, we have in fact created new content. And many of you out there are going to be laughing, say, that sounds a little bit like AI, or that sounds a little bit like machine learning. Yes, indeed. All of that is part of building on top of a metaverse and using that technology. The other part of it is a metaverse has two very important pieces. One, it's always there. It's there 7 days, 24 hours. You know that you don't have to go searching, that you can go in and have an experience within the metaverse. So those are four important things already, and I'll tell you the fifth in a second. digital agency, collaboration, ability to create content, and the availability of the metaverse to be 24/7. Now, if you think about all of those, then you can look back and see some of the old technologies that existed, like the kids on the cell phones, and that fundamental impact that that had on them, because those things had the four things that I just pointed out, right? So again, it's just based on the technology. The fifth part of the metaverse, of the new metaverse, is the ability to have an economy behind it. And that's where we come to blockchain and other pieces, that the metaverse can be extremely open and available to people. So if you have 4 of those 5, very likely you have a metaverse platform in front of you. So why is this so important? Well, one of the reasons is that the metaverse and what we call digital twins that will sit on top of a metaverse. So a metaverse ultimately sits on top of blockchain, or it is designed to sit on top of a blockchain. And then that metaverse is really like the infrastructure, the foundation. It's what you put into it. The city that you see behind me now could be a school. It could be your corporate headquarters. It could be your church. It could be anything that physically exists in the real world being digitized and brought on to a platform in which we call a digital twin. Because of that, the ability to have that digital twin and all of these other pieces that I've just mentioned, the reason for that is because we have moved into a whole part of technology where we have decentralized, and we're beginning to decentralize data. If you think about this in your everyday life, and you think about decentralization of data, and you think about all of the hacks that take place and how, you know, your password is being linked, the people who own data are the folks who own the servers. That most data is really protected by the hardware. And it is the ownership of the hardware that really has the ownership over data. Now, there's a lot in between that, but that is a very simple part of what is centralization and decentralization. When you use your credit card, it goes to a number of companies that will process that information, your bank, your credit card company. But they own the data once you use that credit card. They're in charge of that transaction. So you're paying at a restaurant, it goes through a server that's owned by the credit card processor, and then that money, that transaction is sent to that third party, which is the restaurant. And you may be looking at your waiter or waitress as they swipe your card. That all happens in a nanosecond, in a quick moment. But that data is sitting at Bank of America or American Express. So when you have a data breach, it's at the hardware level. That's called centralization of data, where all of this data is stored. The decentralization of data made possible through blockchain means that we're protecting those individual pieces of data, and they're spread throughout the globe, throughout the world. So now that data is owned by you. By decentralization of the data, it no longer simply sits on that one server. It sits on millions of computers across the place, and it's broken down into blocks. This seminar is not about blockchain, but it gives you an idea of what we mean by decentralization of data. In other words, if you own your data right then, you can exchange, you can have that same credit card transaction by using a digital wallet, which is how we're going to control our physical data in the future. or through digital wallets, you will be able to transfer your data directly to that restaurant, immediately to that restaurant. Now we've changed the ability of security. Because of that, we don't have to worry as much about protecting these large mainframes, but we're protecting the data. We've gone from protecting the hardware to protecting the X and O's. That is what is causing this whole transformational technology and emerging technology that you have been seeing, called everything from digital twins, the industrial internet, to the metaverse. It all comes back down to this simple thing called blockchain, and that is what Bitcoin actually sits on. And that's why it took only 10 pages to write everything about Bitcoin, because Bitcoin starts off in the original email saying, we're going to sit on top of the blockchain. Now, what does that mean for your company? And what does that mean for you? And what does that mean as a MetaQuake? Well, let's look at this. If now you can actually own this building behind me, or you can own this city, because if you can own data, data now has value to the individual. And if that data is in your digital wallet, you are able to exchange that data and create value. And you may have heard of things like NFTs. These are tokens that are able to be exchanged. And a token can be anything. It's all just simply about data. It can be a picture. It can be one of the magazines. It can be a city. It can be anything, quite frankly, that you can now get an IP on. You can prove ownership. And if you can own data, you can sell data, and you've created a whole new economy. As a result of being able to create an economy, the underlying piece, another way of which we exchange value, we're able to build wealth. We're able to exchange for goods and services, which is what blockchain allows us to do. If you're able to do that, you're now able to create and recreate entirely new business opportunities that have never existed and could not exist solely in a metaverse platform. Sure, you could sell a book on great services like Amazon, wonderful services like Walmart, all of these companies that are great partners of ours. Of course, you can do that, but again, that was centralization. In the future, you will still use those companies, but you will also be able to become your own processor. You will be able to sell and conduct business and have wealth on your own because of these blockchain processes. On the corporate side, exactly the same thing is true. You will be able to use environments like the metaverse to actually set up a permanent corporate office in which you own, and you're able to control the use of it because you're protecting, again, the data, and you can track down individuals for copyright violations, IP violations. So the ability to track and own your data will make us more willing to share information over this kind of technology, which is still going to be web-based. So companies will find it very easy to set up HR offices, to conduct even more research online, to increase collaboration to their stakeholders through these kind of systems. On the research side, if researchers, and we all know those of us in the academic areas, first to get papers published and how important that is, and the hesitation sometimes, even though we do share, the hesitation of sharing on something as unsecured as the web. Having the ability to track your research and control your research will actually increase the ability for us to collaborate with one another, because the threat of losing our data, losing control of that data, falls into the very first thing that I said, that the metaverse is all about. At the end of the day, it's also about protecting your digital information. Educationally, I believe that the metaverse is absolutely set up to be a better way in which to have an experience. You know, here at the Women to Watch conference, you came into an experience. You did not come into a Zoom meeting. You did not come into a webinar. You came into a full experience. You can play games right now on the platform. You can take a journey on the platform. Psychologically, the level of engagement and the ability to relate to your presence of where you are, that actually increases the ability of people to finish seminars and finish classes. We have found that when you do on demand, and many of us have done it, think about the last LinkedIn class you tried to take or anything that you've done on a seminar, and it's on demand, you download it, you listen to it. We have found that less than 20 to 30% of individuals actually ever complete those pieces. However, in these kind of immersive environments that we're looking at right now, that number of completion, that number of those of you who will stay on this seminar or my talk until it's over, jumps to 70%. We have actually validated that over the last 3 years, that once you're in this kind of environment, you actually stay there. So I've tried to tell you very quickly, what is the metaverse? Just take away, if nothing else from this, take away centralization versus decentralization of data. Let's talk about this being the most important transformational part of technology, not simply a progression of technology, but what we're doing and looking at right now is absolutely transformational. And the beauty of this is that everyone is truly starting at the same starting line. No one has figured this out yet. You have an opportunity right now to be a leader in your company, a thought leader in your company. You're not competing against millions of people who've already done the research. Everybody's trying to figure this out. And your thoughts, your intelligence, your contributions can make you one of the most sought after individuals in the world, because you are approaching this technology in its infancy. So what I like to do is open this up to questions. I'm sure I've got a ton of them. And before you walk away, I'm going to give you my email so that you can reach out to me later. It's publisher@ccgmag.com. publisher@ccgmag.com. And I'll be more than willing to engage and continue this subject that I have, that I am so committed to, and that I think is so important.
Thank you, Dr. Taborn. Unfortunately, because of our tight timing today, we've had to cut that segment short, but it will be fully available at stemcityusa.com.
Since 1986, the Black Engineer of the Year Awards has recognized thousands of people in scientific and technical careers for outstanding achievements in science, technology, engineering, and math fields. Winners have shown an incredible ability to leverage innovation and focus their vision to achieve full potential and opportunity in their careers, industries, and communities. As we gear up to mark our 40th anniversary, our focus remains to showcase hidden talent, promote significant achievement in STEM, and help employers develop and retain minorities with technical skills.
Here are 6 reasons why you should attend the Women of Color STEM Conference. 1.
Meet experts and influencers. WOC attendees come from all rungs of the career ladder. While you won't necessarily meet your business idol, you will meet accomplished women who are experts in their field, one of whom might just be your next mentor. 2. Break out of your comfort zone. Sessions like the Woman to Woman, Up Close and Personal is one example of the type of event that will challenge you to look at your career in a whole new way. It is just the type of event you need to forge new ways of thinking. 3. Educational opportunities. WOC seminars and workshops offer new ideas and trends, exposure to different point of views, new ways to be more productive, opportunities to learn from others, and ways to improve skills and knowledge. 4. Networking with peers. WOC offers opportunities to mix and mingle and form new relationships. It is a valuable resource for best practices to uncover new ideas and spark inspiration when you get to know each other over coffee, lunch, or cocktails at a WOC event. 5. Position yourself as an expert. Frequent attendees to WOC are often asked to lead workshops at the conference. This goes a long way in establishing you as an expert in your field. You'll boost your reputation among your peers, clients, and employer. They'll feel good about their association with you. 6. Have fun. Enjoyment while managing career growth can be rewarding and fun. A little fun with interesting people can be very powerful.
Don't forget, you can explore the metaverse a little bit deeper by visiting STEM City USA and our partner cities, STEM City, Kansas City, Chicago, and Detroit. See what all the hype is about, explore videos and seminar sessions, make friends, and more. Now for our next segment. What role can HBCUs play, and how can they participate in new research and contract opportunities with organizations such as NASA and the U.S. Space Force? We'll seek to answer these questions in our next session on HBCUs space research. Our moderator is Dr. Michelle Penn Marshall, Vice President of Research and Innovation at Texas Southern University. She will be joined by Tori Johnson, the manager for the Minority University Research and Education Project within NASA's office, and Crystal Wiseman, contracting officer at NASA Johnson Space Center. Welcome.
Thank you so very much, Jessica. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and I'm so pleased to have Mr. Tori Johnson and Ms. Crystal Wiseman from NASA with us. We don't have a lot of time, so I want to make sure that you take a few moments to read their bios. They're quite extensive. Crystal is a contracting officer, and she, as a fully warranted contracting officer, she further enables space exploration by serving as a I've lost my notes here. She further enables space exploration by serving as a business advisor while she leads efforts to negotiate and administer multiple contracts for products and services. She also enjoys helping new faculty members get into that contracting space. I want to share a little bit of information about Mr. Tori Johnson, who is the manager of the Minority University Research and Education Project. We all know that as MUREP, and the NASA Office of STEM Engagement. And he has worked at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center for more than 15 years. So again, I welcome them and I thank them very much for their time. We are going to really talk about HBCUs and space research. And we know that the United States has successfully launched the Artemis rocket, and NASA looks to return to the moon and onwards to Mars. We also know that the United States Space Force has become the sixth branch of the U.S. military. We are going to delve a little bit deeper with our experts on the panel today in the role that historically Black colleges and universities can play, and how HBCUs can get in on the ground floor with new research and contract opportunities with NASA. So I want to turn it over to Crystal, and I want to give her the first question, and Tori can answer it as well if he will. From each of your vantage points and your current positions and your years of experience, what critical role can HBCUs play with NASA?
So I would start by saying, hey, a little history, right? So National HBCU Week was created August 8th of 1980 when President Jimmy Carter signed the executive order. This was directing the Secretary of Education to implement, and I'll quote, a federal initiative designed to achieve a significant increase in the participation by historically black colleges and universities in federally sponsored programs. This is amazing, right? This order also committed the initiative to seek and identify and reduce and eliminate barriers that may have unfairly prevented these institutions from participating in such programs like NASA. Um, NASA has taken this initiative seriously by creating its own HBCU outreach initiatives to include road tours and information seminars. Additionally, NASA is currently the only agency that has a statutory requirement to commit 1% of its contracting dollars to HBCUs and universities alike. So historically, we have not been able to meet this goal. As a result, we are tasked as an agency to become more innovative, in how we leverage diverse talents and skills, ensuring that HBCUs have a fair opportunity to compete and are postured properly to go after some of the major contracts. And sometimes this will look like, from a contracting standpoint, subcontracting on some of the major contracts, going into internships on some of the contracts or with some of the contractors that hold some of the larger contracts at NASA to get some of this exposure, this opportunity, and this insight. So, having said that, HBCUs play a significant role with NASA by allowing us to build a diverse STEM pipeline and offering new diverse perspectives to the agency with this ongoing diverse perspective to the agency's ongoing work to send humans to the moon and Mars and beyond.
Oh, thank you for that comprehensive answer, Crystal. And I hope we have 102 HBCUs, and I hope that each of my sister schools, I'm at Texas Southern right now, actually heard about those opportunities. We had the road tour there, we hosted it, and Mr. Torrey Johnson was there, and you were as well as a Texas Southern University alumna in September of 2022. Those information sessions, we're always getting emails about them, but the information that comes really does provide you with the cutting edge type of advice you need to be successful. And for NASA to have 1% of their contracts need to come from HBCUs, and you all have not met that, that means we have an opportunity to do more to ensure that you meet it and need to tip it over that 1%. I want to turn this, so thank you. I want to turn this same question or any other question or information that Mr. Torrey Johnson would like to share with the audience today.
Thank you, Dr. Penn Marshall, and I appreciate my colleague Crystal giving us some historical context on the role of HBCUs, not just for a week, right, but for the entire year and ongoing. And so part of my role within the Minority University Research and Education Project is that we have congressional language via executive orders that aid us, inform us as federal agencies on directions, right? And so there's a White House initiative on HBCUs. It gives us an opportunity as a federal agency to talk about how we would plan to increase our engagement with HBCUs specifically. And so that means that we as an agency, not just my program, go out and talk amongst our colleagues, Crystal's office in procurement, our small business areas, our mission directorates, talking about how do we look at engagement? What's the role of not just talking about our students, but how do we build capacity at HBCUs? We do that through competitive research awards, through solicitations. I'm going to throw out a number of acronyms, something called INSPIRES. The NSPIRES. It's a place where many of the funding opportunities that we have at NASA are listed. You can actually get an account there. But the reason it's so important is information is power. And so in order for us to engage with HBCUs, those 102 valuable resources, across the country, we share opportunities that may fit with your particular institution's research direction. Which way are you looking? Right now, we just sent out multiple awards in the areas of curriculum development. One HBCU won that, UDC, so kudos to them. And we also had about $9 million of awards focused on space technology with our mission director, something called MSTAR, where we had 9 awards, but 3 went to HBCUs focused on research and technology. And so critically important as we're talking about the return to the moon and eventually going on to Mars, do we have the requisite diversity of voices, of skill sets and backgrounds that will aid us in doing this mission? Our administrator often shares that we as an agency don't go to these places alone. We don't accomplish the feats that we do alone. And so those are partnered, collaborative efforts with diverse voices sharing to tackle big problems. And that's what we do as an agency. And so it's critically important that the generation that is currently in school at your institutions at HBCUs find themselves in STEM pathways. We love that if you come in STEM. But there are agency efforts, agency jobs, as well as the STEM field and ecosystem itself. And we think that that's vitally important, that we have a nice cross-section of individuals participating in this STEM and aerospace mission.
Mr. Johnson, that is an excellent segue to the next question. But before I ask that question, I also want to just remind my colleagues, as an HBCU graduate myself, but my colleagues who are listening, the students as well as the faculty and the administrators, what an awesome opportunity we have to work with NASA to ensure that the United States is on the cutting edge and that we're leading the way. And diverse thoughts, diverse opinions, diverse backgrounds really help to solve today's problems. So thank you for everything that you shared. And I hope that we will take advantage of those opportunities because you all as an agency are invested. What skills or qualities will be needed to be a leader and contribute to NASA in the next 25 or 50 years? From what you all hear when you're in your meetings, from what you know as just visionary leaders, what skills do we in higher education and specifically at our HBCUs, in addition to STEM, but other skills that we need to ensure that we expose our students to?
Yeah, I don't mind taking a stab at that. I would say, first and foremost, in addition to the things that students are learning in the textbooks, we have to understand that technology is what's getting us there. Technology is a fast-paced and ever-changing, ever-evolving institution or area of practice. And so with that being said, you have to be able to keep up and stay current and competitive. In addition to that, you have to be willing and able to continuously learn. Um, we are operating in an area, the word that we are using and hearing oftentimes is agile. And that's going to require you to do a lot of learning, do a lot of unlearning, and do a lot of relearning to be able to go along with the ever-changing industry, which is technology and specifically space and research and aerospace and things of that nature. So I would say, learn your lessons, learn what's in those textbooks, do those assignments, but it's the interpersonal skills that one would have to be proficient in to bring to the table, and that goes across any master or major or degree, right? It's not just technology. It's not just science. You will learn that, and you have skills that you will learn that can bring you here to be a part of NASA and what we're doing. Personally, I don't have a degree in technology or science. I have a master's degree in public administration. I work in procurement. I'm not a scientist. I work in procurement, but my role in procurement is a major role. Without procurement, none of the things that are going on in space could happen. So it's not limiting yourself or your thoughts to only being in those technology areas.
I'm sorry. I'm so pleased that you shared that, your background, your educational training, and that it's not in STEM, but it is critical to every mission of NASA. And I just took something away from what you shared as well. Learning and unlearning, because there's some things I need to unlearn. I'm used to doing it a certain way. I'm comfortable with that. But yet in today's society, it is not what is needed or expected. So I see that Mr. Torrey Johnson, so thank you, Ms. Wiseman. Mr. Torrey Johnson has unmuted, and I'd like him to be able to add to the discussion.
Love this topic. This question frames us to looking toward what we need almost a generation later, right? How are we preparing ourselves not only for now, but for next? And so when we talk about innovation and cutting edge technology, I love what my colleague shared about unlearning. I think about it as interdisciplinary skills. We need chemists, and we need biologists, and we need botanists, and we need technicians and researchers and all of that. You know what we also need? We need good communicators. We need people who are open in their conversation. We need project managers. I might be dating myself, but I like to think of, we need people who are like Gumby, who are flexible and pliable. How will you accomplish this great work that's got to happen? And so you need people from so many facets and backgrounds. And the last thing that I'd say, we need people who appreciate what they don't know. I am fascinated by the power of query. I am not the master of many things, but I do need to know who to get access to and what is the question or questions that I need to ask of them in order to move my mission forward and ultimately move our agency's mission forward. And so, I think those skills of questioning, you go back to kindergarten and you start to think about how do you ask an open-ended question so that you can elicit more response. And so I think those are really important skills. I equally think that finding one's voice is critical so that you can show up in spaces, not just physically, but that you can bring more of yourself. And I think that's not just for HBCUs, but for us as individuals. How do you show up and remain present in a meeting? How do you show up and remain present in the execution of a goal? That, I think, moves us all forward.
Excellent and outstanding advice. We're often taught to be here now, and there's so many things that compete for our attention, but we need to be attentive to being present, as you mentioned, but also I heard you say executing, following through with what we said we would do, or the thoughts that we have, or that yield, to the discussion and help us achieve those goals and objectives. Outstanding. I didn't know I was going to learn so much. I knew you both were extremely experienced and knowledgeable, and I'm not just saying that because you kindly agreed to serve on the panel, but just based on interacting with you previously and based on your bios and all that you've done at the agency. Would you all please share with the audience, based on NASA's strategic plans and or visions, or your unit, or your division, and we've talked about this a little bit, but what areas should professionals and students anticipate? We've talked about emotional intelligence that's needed, the soft skills that are needed, STEM, business, acumen. What else, as we go into 25 years from now, 50 years from now, retooling, reskilling, upskilling, what else should we anticipate from NASA? or anything that you want to share in the 10 minutes that we have remaining that will really benefit our audience, whether it pertains to that question or not. Something that maybe we don't know that you are allowed to share that would be helpful as we go forward to partner with you.
Crystal, do you mind if I take this one first?
Not at all. Go ahead.
Excellent. So if I start broadly and say, from an agency perspective, we're often talking about broadening participation. How do we achieve this very large goal, right? We talked about it before, of having more people together going with in order to achieve these goals. That means that there are other partners, industry partners, academia. We're going to have think tanks and community engagement, and all of these folks going together and learning. But from an Office of STEM engagement perspective, we have thought of three tenets, three key areas. We're talking about K through 12. This next generation, because we're talking about 20 to 25 years, 25 to 30. So there's a group of young people that may be in our neighborhoods, maybe down the street from us, maybe kinfolk across the country, that need to appreciate their opportunity in STEM. And some of that looks like curriculum. Some of that looks like going to their neighborhood museum, or finding some spaces for them to engage with wonderful institutions like yours at the HBCUs, where they can get exposed to knowledge, information, mentors, and studying of careers. Broadening participation means just that. The participation needs to be broadened beyond who currently has access to information, has access to the decisions, has access to the funding, has access to contribute to what needs to be executed in our agency. And so more voices, more participation. And then lastly, it's partnerships. If we're not doing this alone, then there have to be connections, strategic connections, alliances, cohorts, coalitions in order to do this. Some of them are funded. We talked about some of the awards and things. Some of them are not. Some of them are more conversations, more strategic conversations, just hearing about how the HBCUs are even doing events like this, bringing people together to share information. We can no longer be siloed and hoard, respectfully, information to oneself. This is about removing barriers and increasing access. When we do that, I think we find ourselves in places where we can be more strategic and achieve the goals of the agency, and in our case, the Office of STEM Engagement. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Access is something that I often talk about. I often use two words. I want our HBCUs to thrive, not just to survive, but in order to do that, access is key, not just to HBCUs, it's key in the world. We need to level the playing field, open the doors, let people have seats at the table. So thank you for using that word, and thank you for your broad, and then you made it very narrow response. Ms. Wiseman, would you like to add anything or anything different? It doesn't have to pertain to that question.
Yeah, absolutely. I will start by just re-emphasizing NASA's mission, right? So our mission is exploring the secrets of the universe for benefits to us all. And having a mission that is so it's important, it's like foundational. If you keep that mission in mind, that the things and the exploration that's going on, while it may sound profound and it's exciting and new, at the bottom line, it is for the benefit of us all. So being a part of something like that, um, I would have to say, from a personal standpoint, has been such an honor from my purview. Um, and so I'll just say, so the focus for NASA is primarily on planetary science, with the mission to explore the unknown in the air and in space. We innovate for the benefit of humanity and inspires the world through discovery of those unknowns. So we do this by maintaining our national posture, which will include maintaining in international relationships and global influence. For example, we're going to have a manned launch that is scheduled for November 2024, and NASA is partnering with Canada, and we'll have the first Canadian to fly in this endeavor. We'll have the first woman to also fly in this endeavor, and the first person of color to also fly in this endeavor, with hopes to go into the moon and beyond, right? So with all this, our current environment is to do more with less. And this could be reflected upon opportunities, innovations and efficiencies that you can contribute to. HBCUs can contribute to these things. Some of the things that we spoke about earlier about forums and opportunities like this. It's the opportunities. It's opportunities. It's opportunities. I can't stress it enough. It's opportunities being involved. And we are at a time now where HBCUs and minority serving institutions are exposed. They do have a seat at the table. If they don't have a seat at the table, someone really close to them does. So that's emphasizing the importance of partnerships, right? Stepping outside of your comfort zone, stepping outside of what you're used to, what you know. One of you spoke earlier about being comfortable with the unknowns, being comfortable with knowing that there are things that you don't know. I think I paraphrased that. But once you understand and accept that there are things that you don't know, but you're willing to get out there and explore them and learn them, it opens lots of doors for you. Opportunities are limitless. So that's what I have to share. That's
That
what I have to share.
that is outstanding. Opportunities, partnerships, because we're in this together and to the moon and beyond. So yes, thank you. I know we just have about a minute and a half. I absolutely want to thank our panelists, Mr. Torrey Johnson, Ms. Crystal Wiseman, and I want to invite everyone to the BEYA conference in February 15th through 17th in Baltimore. But in the last minute we have left, I'd like to yield 30 seconds to Ms. Wiseman and 30 seconds to Mr. Johnson. Take us away.
Well, I will repeat myself and say thanks so much for the opportunity to be just to be present in this environment. Being a two-time graduate from Texas Southern University, which is an HBCU for those that don't know, it makes me very proud to not only represent my school, because as you know, once you walk across that stage and get that piece of paper, you're now forever representing that school, and also represent my agency. We spoke earlier about innovation that went on the campus of Texas Southern University with NASA back in September, and it was a perfect match. It's like, how do I not go support my school? How do I not go to my alma mater and representing the agency that I currently work for? So I walk every day understanding and knowing that as an HBCU graduate, I am a representative. I am, they say that we have to have representation. I am representation, and it feels great. You are
And,
representation.
and you represent well. I think we have about 10 seconds. Thank you so much, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, I'll say quickly, thanks again to Dr. Penn Marshall and all of you for attending. Ask that you Google MSI Exchange. Wonderful resources abound at the agency where you'll see opportunities, funding. You can get access to our newsletter so that you can get information about faculty opportunities, student opportunities, and ways that you can get involved. Thank you so much. Look forward to engaging with you soon.
Thank you all so very much. Have a good afternoon, and don't forget to follow up on all of this information that was shared.
So why be a part? If you're looking to improve your skill set, then our conferences are where you need to be. In today's world, people need training more than ever, even if it is a little refresher, and this is the place to learn. These are career-changing events that enrich your life both professionally and personally. If you're a student who is in college looking to graduate and want to find out what it's like to be a new professional, this is the place to be. You're going to learn from new professionals. You're going to be sitting right next to one of them. They need to tweak their skills. They're still learning. Sitting next to them is going to be a middle manager, someone who needs a little refresher on how do I deal with employees? How do I help them? How do I make them better employees? And last but not least, the person on that row is going to be the CEO of the next Fortune 500 organization, because they want to find the hungry employees and hire that person. So who should come to our seminars? Pretty much everyone.
In the fall of 2018, about 4.1 million students were enrolled at Hispanic serving institutions. According to the U.S. Department of Education's National Center for Education Statistics, more than 1.9 million Hispanic students were enrolled at over 400 HSIs in 24 states and Puerto Rico. Earlier this year, the White House Initiative on Advancing Educational Equity, Excellence, and Economic Opportunity for Hispanics announced grants to help Hispanic students and other low-income individuals complete post-secondary degrees.
Welcome back. Our next session will discuss the innovative genius of HBCUs and MSI students, staff, and faculty, and how each of these panelists has mined these gold nuggets of innovation through collective impact partnerships. The moderator of this next session, Latino and Black Research Collaborations, is Bertha Haro, Executive Director at Great Minds in STEM. She is joined by Alonzi Scott, SES Director of Mission Support Office of Naval Research, and Dr. Nancy Warder Perez, Dean of the College of Engineering, Computer Science, and Technology at California State University, Los Angeles. Welcome.
Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for joining us in this exciting session today. Our topic, we are discussing Latino and Black research collaborations, the power of coalitions. My name is Berta Haro. I am the Executive Director with Great Minds in STEM. Great Minds in STEM is actually a sister organization to BEYA. We were founded together by both Dr. Tyrone Taborn and our founder, Ray Mellado. And it's exciting to be here. We have always enjoyed a strong partnership between BEYA and Great Minds in STEM. And so thank you for the opportunity to once again engage with my BEYA familia. I'm excited to be joined by amazing industry colleagues, Mr. Alonzi Scott III, Senior Executive Service Member with the Office of Naval Research, Dr. Nancy Walter Perez, Dean of Cal State LA, in the West Coast, in Los Angeles, California, and welcoming back Dr. Victor McCrary in his other capacity as the Vice Chairman of the National Science Board. So thank you to my panelists.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. So I'm actually going to kick it off from a National Science Board perspective with Dr. McCrary. So thank you for joining us. And Dr. McCrary, my question for you is, where do you see the upcoming opportunities between HSIs and HBCUs to partner and as your role as the Vice Chairman of the National Science Board?
Thank you, Berta. I appreciate that. And hello again to the audience and to my fellow panelists. In 2018, 2020, between 2020 and 2018, the National Science Board came out with its Vision 2030, which said, where do we see the country's research and development ecosystem for the next 10 years? And part of that was to develop diverse domestic STEM talent, or what we call the missing millions. Because if you look at it right now, in terms of STEM, in terms of Black and Latinos, it's about 4%, 6% respectively. How do we get more people in the workforce? And because right now at this moment, we are in a Sputnik 2 moment, we are in great global competition. That competition is fierce. And so we need all hands on deck to help us. And so I was a product of the Sputnik 1 when we were having the race to the moon, and we spent tons of resources, both in the public schools and hiring people with the new math. Probably the math cards that I learned from are now in the Smithsonian. We learned science kits, chemistry sets. That's why I got into chemistry. We're at that point right now. And so from the National Science Board perspective, we also can't just rely on bringing in talent. We have to grow our talent and to develop and utilize that talent here in America. So that means the young man who's in Southeast Washington, D.C. That means the young woman who might be in Appalachia. That means the young man or woman who are on the reservation. That means the women and young men who are in the barrios. We need everybody right now to tap, because we believe that talent is equally distributed, but access is not. And so one big galvanizing piece of legislation, which we discussed earlier in this forum, was the CHIPS and Science Act, which was passed last August and signed by President Biden. It talks about not only bringing semiconductor manufacturing back to the United States, but it also talks about putting funds in particularly community colleges, HBCUs, and MIs. You think a large part of our populations are in community colleges, and to train people not only in semiconductor manufacturing, but quantum information, biotechnology, artificial intelligence, 5G, and advanced manufacturing. So plants are being built across the country. So if you think about in Arizona, there is a plant that's being built by Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing. There's a plant in Idaho that's being built by Micron Technology. There's a Intel plant that's breaking ground in the middle of Ohio. We want to expand the geography of innovation, and we want all demographics, and particularly folks who may not have had the chance to go to the schools or institutions that may be, in the Palo Altos or in the 128 areas. We need to tap all of that innovation, because I know there is some young man or young woman who is out there who can come up with the next design for a chip, who may have the cure for cancer, who may be able to help us with one of the most existential challenges we face, and that is climate change, and that we can tap all of those folks. As a personal note, I started my career at Bell Laboratories. And if you look at the history of Bell Laboratories, when they started in 1925, they pulled a large number of their scientific workforce from the farms. Now, why you say from the farms? What does that have to do with telecommunications? Well, at that time, the telecommunication systems that we take for granted right now were electromechanical, okay? And so where do you get people who have the intuition on electrical or mechanical devices? People who worked on farms with farm equipment. And that's what they did. And they brought those folks into the laboratories. And so from our national perspective, we're facing some of the challenges, and I know the other panelists will talk about that. We have a lot of challenges in terms of cybersecurity, with disinformation campaigns, the use of social media. We know that these students who are out there are familiar with that, and that somebody who's on the streets of South Central LA can come in and work in the workforce, whether it's both civilian or military, and make a contribution. And so from the National Science Board, since we are both oversee the National Science Foundation and advisors to the presidents, I will say on behalf of the chair, we want you right now. President Joe Biden wants you to get into STEM. And it doesn't matter what you look like, rich or poor, where you're from, we need you now.
Thank you, Dr. McCrary. And what's most important is that there's on-ramps and off-ramps for students. So at any point that they're ready to upstage and continue to develop their education, there's great opportunities for them. And so that's exciting. Thank you very much.
And I just want to finish. We also did a report on the skilled technical workforce. Some people call it blue collar STEM, because what we need now is we need everybody from plumbers to PhDs, from electricians to electrical engineers. So whether you have no degree, 2-year degree, 4-year degree above, certifications, you are a STEM worker, and we need your help.
Exactly. Thank you. Mr. Scott, last year, you charted the course and you were leading for the Office of Naval Research an environmental scan of the STEM engagement opportunities across our nation. Recently, you and your team produced Bridging the Gap report. Can you please share your process and some of the recommendations?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here with such a distinguished panel. And I can tell you the world that we're living in is changing at such a rapid pace. In the Navy, there's a term that we call all hands on board, where we need all citizens on board. And the challenges that we face from our adversaries outside of just climate control is one of the big ones, but the PRC is one of the major peer adversaries out there. Before I get into some examples of what was happening with this Bridging the Gap study that I'll share some research, I actually took a trip in a class where I got a chance to talk to all the major 4 stars uh, for um, for the United States military, and all of them had one reoccurring theme that I got out of that, and I was so glad that I was doing this assessment, is that we need better talent, and we need talent faster than we have been providing it. We need our folks to be engaged in the different fields, and we also need people thinking about the things that we don't even know. Are we going to be fighting the same kind of warfare that we're fighting today, 20 years from now, 30 years from now? How is that going to affect the career fields and the professionals that we'll need in the future? We don't know. But what I want to try to say is that the STEM field is the area where those types of things will be identified for us. And we need experts at all levels. So one of the things that I was very excited about this past year is that I had a chance to work with a group of folks out of across the Navy. We took all the top GS-15 folks who were interested in becoming senior executives and put them in a program called Bridging the Gap. And as an SES, I get to submit what is known as an action learning project to that team. And my project for them was to figure out how to expand naval STEM across the nation and get past where we're located today, which is mostly around all our installations. I want to figure out how to get to the top 200 or 300 cities where people who look like us are actually living in those locations. So the study was really done very well. It's a public releasable document. It took me a little time to get that approval, but we've came up with some really fascinating, what I would consider examples or recommendations. One is we want to collaborate with all the affinity groups that are in the marketplace. That's BEYA, that's NSBE, that's SWE, that's the ACEs, and on and on and on. And the report identifies some of those key elements for us, because we see those as the only way that we can reach all these different marketplaces, is work with organizations who have foots and steps and people in communities where we need to be. It's because the United States Navy, although we are at sea all over the world, we are not all over the United States in terms of our programs and services. And we want to try to change that. I believe some of the other things that we're looking at is the technologies that we're going to operate under. You've all heard of programs like NREP and CREP and CAP and all these other different programs that we have available, such as SMART and the Defense Science and Engineering Graduate Program and SMART, and it just goes on and on and on. All these programs are great. However, I don't know if we're reaching all the marketplaces that we need those programs to be in. We've got the HBCU program manager, Anthony Smith, who's going to be talking a great deal about how O&R is going to expand our aperture into different places than we've been in the past. You'll notice when you go to our website, which is the nrenavy.mil education site, and we've got all these different programs, they will say things like, we're working with you for 10 weeks. Personally, I think that's great, but I want people working with us year round. I don't need I think the 10-week thing is a great idea, but one of the new programs we're getting ready to launch out of O&R headquarters based on this study is we're going to do a year-round internship program at the Office of Naval Research and link these people up with our program officers who are doing this fantastic research around the country. We think that's going to allow us to build a better pipeline to serve the nation and provide the kind of services that we need in the future. And I would think also the most important thing that's going to help us is we've got to do a better job of marketing what it is that STEM is all about to some extent. And I think that's going to take leaders like the folks on this call and the people who are listening to our session today. Those folks have got to get out and start advocating on behalf of STEM and helping kids across the country get engaged. It's one of the most fascinating fields out there, and I would hope we continue to do even more. I don't want to spend as much time going over all the details in the study itself, but I also want to add one other aspect to this thing that I think is important. Leaders like me in places like the Office of Naval Research are rare. There's just not a lot of people around looking like us in these jobs. We've got to get more professors. We've got to get more program officers. We've got to get more experts who are willing to take on these federal service jobs and opportunities. No, we don't make as much money as the folks in the industry, but I can tell you, serving the nation is probably one of the best things I've ever done in my entire life. And I can tell you the experiences I've had of riding on a submarine or riding on a aircraft carrier or flying in a F-18 and on and on and on. I can tell you it's just the kind of environment I think we need to build with all the people in the marketplace today. I don't know how we can do it all in the time frame that we have and during my lifetime, but I would hope we continue to move forward and push people in the directions we need to go in terms of STEM.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. And it's been an honor to work with you over a decade, and we have broke ground together. One of the key initiatives when we first started collaborating was what you led when you were with NAVC, and that was the HSI HBCU scholarships. And Cal State LA was one of the institutions that received many scholarships during that time. Those individuals are now STEM professionals.
I know.
We have honored some of them as STEM professionals. And so our work has definitely broadened the pipeline. And so I appreciate our continuing collaboration. Now we get to hear from someone that's in the daily work of preparing the next generation of STEM professionals, and that is our Dean, Nancy Water Perez. And Dean, please share with us, I know because I am a proud alumni, that Cal State LA is the #1 institution for the upward mobility of its graduates. I just finished my tenure as president of the Alumni Association, but I am still a board of trustee member. Please share with us your exciting work as dean for the College of Science and Engineering.
Yeah, hi. So I'm the Dean of Engineering, Computer Science, and Technology. And as Bertha said, we are Cal State LA, which is primarily a Hispanic serving and a PC serving institution, with most of our students being first generation, first in their families to attend college, as well as Pell eligible. But our students are, as Bertha mentioned, we're #1 in upward mobility. And the reason for that is we've got fantastic students. Our students are coming in with lots of strengths, with lots of talents. As Victor mentioned, we have the farmers, for instance, in that became the electromechanical knowledge was really valuable. We've got students who have tremendous knowledge and understanding, but we need them to understand that these are assets that they have that are translatable to being successful in STEM careers. And so that's a big focus of our college, is how do we meet our students where they are and help provide the support that they need to be successful? And also, how do we help our students bring their whole selves in so they don't have to compromise who they are? In fact, we need who they are. We need their diverse perspectives, knowledge, and we need them to celebrate that and be comfortable bringing their whole selves in and bringing their whole selves into the workforce. And we also need to work and make sure that the workforce is ready for that as well. As we work with different partners across all different sectors, it's interesting to see the different initiatives that are going on. We have a couple. One is our EcoSTEM, which is helping our faculty really understand our students' community culture wealth, helping them realize, oh yeah, how do I help our students bring this knowledge, bring these skills, bring these perspectives, and value what they know into the classroom to do better in their studies, to have an easier time of understanding what they're doing. If the more we can make what we're doing, make sense of what we're doing, understand the impact of what we're doing, the more successful we're going to be. We've got a bunch of acceleration initiatives. And again, that's to help our students meet them where they are And that goes through K through 12 outreach through both our MESA programs that we've had for a long time, as well as programs for encouraging more women to pursue careers in STEM, but also how do we meet our freshmen? How do we help them to develop the math and science skills they need and give them some additional support in their first couple of years? And then, as you mentioned, community college is key. How do we help students to get the degrees they need as a community college and see that there might be ways to continue on or continue into industry? And how do we support that? So we've got different programs that are doing that throughout our acceleration initiative, as well as another program, which is Impact LA. We need to broaden participation in engineering, computer science, and technology. And one way to do that is there's a lot of students of color, women students, who want to give back to their communities. So how do we help them build that engineering identity? How do we help them work with their families to support them in their studies? Well, one of the ways is the more we're engaged in the community, giving back, doing projects, that students are helping their communities as well as helping understand more the concepts that they're trying to learn. And so we've got a bunch of different initiatives to do that are broadening participation in research, broadening participation in engineering itself. And one last thing is just about building relationships. And that's one of the reasons I'm really excited about being here, is it's making connections with people, building relationships, understanding the barriers, understanding the issues. And that's one of the things that we're doing, is pulling together locally some of our Black nonprofits to understand how can we, what do you know? What do we need to know? What are we all trying to do together? So working in that collective impact model to move the needle, because we need to move the needle more. As everybody has said, the Sputnik 2 moment, it's critical, and it's critical for our country, and it's critical for our students.
So
Thank you.
Bertha, let me add a couple of more thoughts to what Nancy said about the relationship piece. This is vital for all of us. The reason why you can achieve anything in any organization is by working with other people. And the more you interact with folks who don't think, act, look, or believe in the same things that you believe, sometimes you can probably get some of the best innovations. One of the things I'm really proud about with this study, and I hope I can get this to everyone that's listening, I want you to take a look at what we put together. It's only 34 pages. It's got some very vital information. There's different things. It talks about something called funding opportunities, announcements, FOA. Even if we put out something that you can't bid on, or you think that you have anything that you can share, you can always submit an idea that's unsolicited for us, and we will consider that option and come up with dollars to fund those things. I can guarantee you we're looking for the best innovation we can get out there. So don't think that, oh, well, I'm not a PhD, I'm not a master's person, I'm just a guy that's tinkering around in my farmland or out in my garage, and I come up with something that's unique that's going to help solve a problem for the U.S. Navy. We want to hear about that, and we are interested in talking to you. So that's the kind of relationship we're trying to build across the entire enterprise. So please, by all means, take a look at what we're going to provide you. And I hope we get a chance to drop the study out there so people can take a look at it. It's a quick read, and you don't need to have a PhD to understand what we're trying to get to.
Absolutely. Thank you. One of the areas that the report actually highlights that is very well represented here is collaboration among affinity groups and dialogue and collaboration. And I know Cal State LA has a lot of student organizations. All of those student organizations, they help with student retention, but it also helps to build industry partners and to have access to role models, individuals that look like you, that are killing it, that are making amazing contributions in their respective areas. And so
Bertha, I was going to say along that line,
yes,
there are a couple of upcoming conferences, because there are the minority technical organizations we really have to reach to, because I belong to the National Organization of Black Chemists and Chemical Engineers, and I also belong to the American Chemical Society.
Yeah.
And both are helpful, but But Novache is really important because I meet the other folks like me and we say, hey, look, how do we develop navigational capacity to overcome the barriers and as well as reach the opportunities? So the Novache conference is coming up in September. I know Great Minds in STEM's conference is coming up in October. The SOCNIS conference will be coming up in October in Portland. And then the NESB conference will be coming up. And then, of course, I have to give a plug to BEYA 2024, February 15th through 17th, as well as the first week in October is the Women of Color in STEM conference. So I would really say all of our folks get out there, because when you go to these conferences, we're talking about coalitions. More and more, you're going to see Blacks and Latinos together. Even at many of our HBCUs, if you start to look at the demographics, it's starting to increase with the Latino population because they're following in the tracks of our forefathers and say, hey, look, I want my first gen students to come. And many of the issues that both Blacks and Latinos face are the same. And so they're coming to the institutions to say, hey, look, how can I get exposed to this? So I would say definitely for some of you professors out there who are sitting on some grant money, send your students to these conferences because they need to start building those relationships with the Navy as well as places like Cal State. They exhibit at these conferences because you may be thinking about graduate school, but more or less you might find somebody who looks like you or somebody who's concerned about you who can be a mentor. And relationships at the end of the day, I think somebody mentioned here about money. It's not about money. It's not about fame. It's about the relationships you have and the quality of those relationships. And you need to start early because you don't want to dig your well when you're thirsty. You know, you want to say, hey, I know Dean Walter Perez. I know Mr. Scott. And by the way, a couple of years from now, I might be interested in working for them or collaborating with them. So those are great opportunities.
Yes. And if they're doing great stuff, we will find you. I've got people out there looking for you now.
Definitely. I know we're almost running out of time, but I do want to say that all of the distinguished panel members that are here are also active on LinkedIn. And so when we're talking about networking, of course, attend in-person sessions across the nation, but also connect with us online on LinkedIn as well. And save the dates, February 15th through the 17th in Baltimore, Maryland for BEYA 2024.
And another
Enjoy
point is,
our world-class seminars.
The BEYA STEM Conference features world-class seminars designed to enhance your career and champion your success. Be sure to take part.
Today's activities are on the conference app. BEYA, becoming everything you are.
Since 1986, the Black Engineer of the Year Awards has recognized thousands of people in scientific and technical careers for outstanding achievements in science, technology, engineering, and math fields. Winners have shown an incredible ability to leverage innovation and focus their vision to achieve full potential and opportunity in their careers, industries, and communities. As we gear up to mark our 40th anniversary, our focus remains to showcase hidden talent, promote significant achievement in STEM, and help employers develop and retain minorities with technical skills.
Congratulations, you've made it to the pinnacle of our program. We will now be presenting the 2023 list of the top supporters of HBCUs. You can learn more and read the full story on topsupporterslist.com.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed your day. I am Veronica Nelson, Executive Director of AME, Advancing Minorities' Interests in Engineering. Today's BEYA Leading Voices Summit unveils the 2023 top supporters of HBCU engineering programs. This year's top supporters list showcases the companies and government organizations whose support helps achieve diversity through partnerships. Since 2003, deans of the HBCU Schools of Engineering and the AME Corporate and Academic Alliance have completed Career Communications Group Top Supporters of HBCU Engineering Schools survey. The survey is conducted by the U.S. Black Engineer and Information Technology magazine. The top supporters are companies and government agencies considered most supportive of the HBCU Schools of Engineering and their programs, and they contribute to the institutional mission of these schools. Supporting the HBCUs is essential to the development of our nation's potential. HBCUs have produced many of America's leaders across all professions and continue to be the engine of economic growth, both in the surrounding communities and for the graduates of the institutions. Today, we acknowledge the companies and organizations dedicated to strengthening these partnerships that will lead us to a better future. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2023 top supporters of HBCU engineering programs.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we wrap up the second annual BEYA Leading Voices Summit, we want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today. Thank you again to our speakers and our panelists who generously shared their insights and expertise with us. Your knowledge and passion have inspired us all. Today's conversation on the importance of collaboration between HBCUs and tech companies and the transformative power of innovation has been invaluable. It is through dialogues like these that we can drive meaningful change in the STEM community and empower the next generation of leaders. At BEYA, our mission is to create a platform where underrepresented individuals in STEM can thrive, connect, and excel. The Leading Voices Summit embodies this mission by showcasing their incredible work done by HBCU Vice Presidents of Research and their partners. Together, we are shaping the future of technology, and paving the way for a more inclusive and diverse STEM landscape. We encourage you to continue the conversation sparked today, foster collaborations, and embrace the spirit of innovation that has been ignited during the summit. Let us build on the momentum generated here and continue to make a positive impact in our communities and beyond. Once again, thank you for being part of the BEYA Leading Voices Summit. We look forward to seeing you back in Baltimore at BEYA, becoming everything you are in 2024. Until next time.